at my dad's will reading. My cousin Derek laughed and said, I already took the money and spent it. Good luck getting anything. But the lawyer, Mr. Grant, just smiled and slid a folder across the table. You might want to read this first, he said. Derek's smile disappeared as he started reading. I had a bad feeling when I walked into the law office. The air felt heavy, like something bad was about to happen. I sat down at the long table, my hands clenched in my lap. My dad and I didn't have the best relationship, but I was there to hear his will out of respect. Derek was already there, looking way too confident. He was wearing fancy clothes and an expensive watch. Derek never had money, so something was definitely off. Mr. Grant cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. As you know, Mr. Porter's estate will be divided as per his wishes. Any questions before we begin? I stayed quiet, but Derek just said, Nah, let's get this over with. He looked like he was holding back a laugh. Mr. Grant read the will. My dad had left money, property, and other things to both me and Derek, but as he kept reading, Derek's grin grew bigger. Then came the shocker. The inheritance, which was held in a trust, was already given to Derek 6 months before Mr. Porter's death, as he requested. What? I said, feeling sick. Derek burst out laughing. Yeah, I already got the money and spent it. Good luck getting anything. I stared at him, feeling cold and angry, but Mr. Grant wasn't bothered at all. In fact, he looked amused. Then he did something surprising. He pulled out a folder and pushed it toward Derek. Actually, he said calmly, you might want to read this first. Derek's face went pale as he opened the folder and looked at the papers. What? This can't be real, he stammered. Mr. Grant adjusted his glasses. Oh, it's real. Your father suspected you'd try to get the money early, so he set up a fake inheritance to test you. The real inheritance was never part of that trust. I blinked. A test? Derek was shaking now. This is... Mr. Grant cut him off. Yes, it was a test. Your father wanted to see if you'd try to take the money before you were supposed to. Doing that triggered a rule that disinherited you from the real estate and assets. I couldn't help but smile. So, the money Derek took wasn't even the real inheritance? Mr. Grant nodded. Derek shot up from his chair, fists clenched. You're lying. I spent it all. The houses, the cars. I invested it. You can't just... Mr. Grant calmly slid another document across the table. Actually, we can. That's a court order freezing everything left from the stolen trust. Derek went silent, then suddenly started screaming. He began pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. This isn't happening. This can't be real. Mr. Grant sighed. Oh, it's real, and it gets worse. Derek looked up in panic. Worse? Mr. Grant tapped the next page. Your father knew you'd blow through the money, so he made sure you're legally responsible for paying back every cent. Derek collapsed back into his chair, breathing hard. I can't. There's nothing left. That's unfortunate, Mr. Grant said coldly, but we're prepared to go after everything you have. Your father made sure of it. Derek clenched his jaw. You can't get blood from a stone. Mr. Grant raised an eyebrow. You can if the stone committed fraud. I couldn't help but feel satisfied. Derek tried to cheat my dad and ended up ruining himself. He had played himself, and I didn't have to do a thing. Derek's breathing was shaky. I have a house, a car, but... Mr. Grant raised a hand. Not anymore. Derek froze. Mr. Grant gave a cold smile. Everything you bought with that money will be sold to pay off the debt. You won't have a single penny left. Derek looked completely broken. His hands were shaking as he realized how badly he had messed up. And me? I just sat there and watched. This was the best day of my life. I watched Derek's world fall apart right in front of me. His face was pale. His breathing was uneven. He thought he had won, but he was the joke all along. And the best part? He did it to himself. Mr. Grant started packing up his papers, ignoring Derek's meltdown. You can review the documents with your own lawyer, he said, but I suggest not wasting time. The court orders take effect right away. Derek's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. No, 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 this is fraud. He pointed at me. You set me up. This can't be real. I chuckled. Oh, it's real. Derek shot up from his chair, nearly knocking it over. I'll fight this. I'll sue. This is a scam. You can't just take my money. Mr. Grant looked bored. It was never your money, Derek. It was a trust you stole from your own uncle. And now, you're facing the consequences. I expected Derek to lose his temper and start screaming, but instead, he did something worse. He smiled, a creepy, twisted smile. "You think I'll just let this happen?" he said softly. "You think I don't have options?" I tensed up. "Mr. Grant's grip tightened slightly on his briefcase, but he didn't show any fear. Derek leaned forward, his voice low. "Here's the deal. You call this off, and I'll make sure nothing bad happens." Silence. Then Mr. Grant shook his head. Threats. That's always a desperate man's last move." Derek's grin vanished. Mr. Grant stared him down. "I suggest you watch your words, Derek, because if you think you're in trouble now, just wait until the law gets involved." Derek sank back into his chair, his face twisted with anger. Then Mr. Grant looked at me. "There's one more thing." Derek groaned. "Another trap? What else could you take from me?" Mr. Grant ignored him and handed me another folder. "This is something your father wanted you to have personally." I frowned. "What is it?" "Read." I opened the folder. The first page made my heart skip a beat. It was proof, bank statements, fake signatures, years of stolen money, and Derek's name was all over it. I looked up in shock. This is... "Yes," Mr. Grant said. "This isn't just about the trust or the money he blew in the last 6 months. Derek's been stealing from your father for years." I could hear Derek's breathing getting heavier. His foot was tapping quickly under the table. "You're lying," he said through clenched teeth. "No," I said, flipping through the papers. "You are. These are loan applications in my dad's name, secret withdrawals, even a forged property sale. Derek, you weren't just greedy, you were a criminal." Mr. Grant turned to him. "Your uncle didn't want to press charges while he was alive, but after his death, he told us to move forward." Derek looked like he was about to be sick. I closed the folder, my mind racing. "So, what happens now?" Mr. Grant sighed. "Well, that depends." He turned back to Derek. "If you cooperate, we might settle this civilly, but if you fight, we'll pursue full legal action, including criminal charges." Derek's mouth opened, then closed. He knew he was trapped. I thought that was the end, but then Derek did something I didn't expect. 3 days later, Derek disappeared. No calls, no emails, no trace of him. At first, I thought he was just hiding, but then I got a call from Mr. Grant. "We have a problem," he said. My stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves fake passports and trying to run away." I sat up. "You're kidding." "I wish I was," Mr. Grant sighed. "Derek bought a one-way ticket to Argentina. He's trying to escape." I felt a slow burn of anger. "Did he make it?" There was a pause. Then Mr. Grant chuckled. "No, he got caught at the airport." I nearly fell off my chair laughing. Derek was arrested at the airport with a fake passport, a suitcase full of cash, and a very expensive watch he didn't own anymore. Faking your identity while being investigated for financial crimes? Bad idea. And just like that, Derek went from a cocky con artist to a wanted fugitive. The court seized everything: his house, his cars, his bank accounts, even his personal stuff was sold to pay his debts. And me? I got everything my dad wanted me to have. Derek didn't give up easily. He spent months fighting the case, but there was too much evidence. In the end, the law caught up to him. He was convicted of fraud, theft, and attempted identity fraud. His sentence? 15 years. I visited him once, just once. He looked different, thinner, paler. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something broken. "You happy?" he spat through the glass. I thought about it for a second, then smiled. "Yes," and I walked away. After Derek was convicted, I thought it was all over. I had won. I got my father's estate, his money, his business. Derek was in prison, with nothing left. I was finally free of him. Or so I thought. 6 months after Derek's sentencing, I got a letter, not an email, but a real, handwritten letter. It was from Derek. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the best of me. The letter was short, and it scared me. "You think this is over? I have friends. You took everything from me. Now, I'm taking something from you." No signature, just that one chilling sentence. I read it twice, my heart racing. It wasn't just anger, it was a threat. I locked all my doors that night. At first, nothing happened. Weeks passed, then months. I started to think maybe Derek was bluffing, until the break-in. It happened at 3 a.m. My security system went off, waking me up in panic. Someone was trying to break in. By the time the police arrived, the intruder was gone, but they left something behind, a single playing card, a joker, taped to my front door. I went straight to Mr. Grant. "This isn't possible," I said, pacing in his office. "He's in prison." Mr. Grant nodded, looking serious. "He is, but he's not powerless. Derek had connections, small-time criminals, shady partners, people who owed him favors, and now, they're coming for you." That's when I decided, if Derek wanted a war, I'd give it to him. I hired a private investigator. If Derek had people working for him on the outside, I needed to find out who. The PI, a guy named Henderson, was good. 2 weeks later, he came back with names. Derek still had 3 key people running his dirty work: Victor Cole, a former accountant who helped him hide stolen money; Ray Bones Martinez, a tough guy who wasn't afraid to use violence; and Samantha Price, an ex-girlfriend, smart, dangerous, the real mastermind behind Derek's plans. Henderson leaned back in his chair. "These people, they don't scare easy, and they don't give up." I clenched my fists. "Neither do I. I needed to do what my dad did to Derek, set a trap. So, I made it look like I was moving all the estate's money into one weak account. It was a lie, but I made sure the right people heard about it. It worked. 3 days later, Samantha Price showed up at my bank, trying to take the money using fake documents. She didn't know the account was already flagged and the bank manager was working with the police. The moment she handed over the fake papers, the alarms went off. They arrested her right there. Samantha broke down fast, facing serious charges. She spilled everything. Victor Cole, arrested for fraud and tax evasion. Ray Bones Martinez, caught with illegal weapons and other crimes. Derek, turns out, he was running everything from prison using a smuggled phone. When they searched his cell, they found plans detailing how to attack my accounts, my house, even my family. That sealed his fate. Derek's original 15-year sentence doubled to 35 years, no chance of parole. I didn't visit him this time, but I sent him a letter. It was short and clear: checkmate. I never heard from him again, but I knew he read it and understood I'd beaten him for good. Derek's plan had completely fallen apart. His partners were arrested or turned against him. His sentence was extended, and he'd be stuck in prison for most of his life. I should have felt relieved, but I wasn't done yet. Even in prison, Derek was trying to fight back. He hired a high-priced, shady lawyer known for helping criminals. Derek was desperate. He had nothing left to lose. His lawyer sent me a letter demanding a settlement. A settlement. The man who stole from my father and tried to ruin me was now begging for money. I laughed so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. Then, I took action. I hired the best lawyer I could find. And I didn't just fight back, I countersued him for damages, emotional distress, and everything he tried to take. The case moved fast. The judge looked at Derek's history and threw out his case immediately. My countersuit? Approved. The court ruled that everything Derek had left, his belongings, his prison wages, even any money he might get in the future, would go to me. Every dollar he would ever make, mine. Even in prison, he'd be working for me. I sent him one last letter: "Now you work for me. Enjoy the next 35 years. No threats, no insults, just the truth." I never got a reply, but I pictured Derek sitting in his tiny prison cell, reading those words over and over, knowing he lost everything. Derek always thought money was power. He thought he could lie, cheat, and steal his way through life, but in the end, the law and karma caught up with him. And me? I was finally free. Derek was exactly where he deserved to be.
The sound of Mark's hushed voice slithered under our bedroom door at 3 a.m. I lay perfectly still, my heart drumming against my ribs as his words became clearer. I can't talk long. No, she's sleeping. Listen, we need to be careful about this. I'm Eleanor, and until that moment, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. The mattress beneath me felt like concrete as I strained to catch every word. Mark paced in the hallway, his footsteps creating a rhythm that matched my racing pulse. Our son Ryan's door creaked. He must have moved closer to avoid waking me. The irony wasn't lost on me. The numbers don't add up, I know. We'll figure something out before the audit. Audit? My fingers clutched the sheets. In 15 years of marriage, Mark had never mentioned any audit. Janet's got my back on this. She'll smooth things over with the board. Of course his mother would be involved. Janet, the woman who'd spent the last decade trying to prove I wasn't good enough for her precious son. The woman who'd criticized everything from my cooking to my parenting, always with that razor-sharp smile. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. The hall light cast Mark's shadow through the gap beneath the door, a distorted version of the man I'd married. Look, I've got to go. Eleanor's been asking questions about the late nights at the office. Yeah. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy taking care of her sick mother to notice. My mother, Susan, the woman fighting for her life while I juggled being a wife, mother, and daughter. The woman who'd warned me about Mark's ambition when we first started dating. The conversation ended with a whispered goodbye that felt like acid in my ears. I counted to 30 before sliding back into bed, arranging myself exactly as I'd been when he left. The door opened. Mark's cologne, the expensive one Janet had given him for Christmas, drifted in before him. The bed shifted as he settled in, and I felt his hand brush my shoulder. Eleanor? You awake? I kept my breathing steady, fighting the urge to flinch away from his touch. His hand lingered for a moment before withdrawing. Morning arrived with the usual chaos. Ryan bouncing around the kitchen, shoveling cereal into his mouth while I packed his lunch. Mark adjusting his tie in the mirror, the perfect picture of a successful sales manager. Big presentation today, he announced, kissing my cheek. Might be another late one. I handed him his coffee, careful to keep my expression neutral. The third this week? His smile flickered. You know how it is during audit season. Actually, I don't. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Mark's eyes met mine in the mirror, and for a split second, I saw something unfamiliar there. Something cold. You've seemed stressed lately, he said, turning to face me. Maybe you should take a break from visiting your mother so much. Janet mentioned she'd be happy to help more with Ryan. The coffee mug trembled in my hand. I'm fine. Are you? His tone was gentle, concerned, the same tone he used when convincing clients to trust him. You've been different since Susan got sick, distracted, paranoid even. Ryan appeared between us, backpack slung over one shoulder. Mom, can Lily's mum drive me to soccer practice today? Please? I nodded, grateful for the interruption. Lily had been my best friend since college, the only person who saw through Mark's charm from the beginning. Mark checked his watch. I should go. Don't wait up. He kissed Ryan's head, squeezed my shoulder, and was gone. I watched through the kitchen window as he backed out of the driveway, his phone already pressed to his ear. The morning sun caught his wedding ring, sending a flash of light across our manicured lawn. That's when I knew, really knew, that everything was about to change. The perfect life I'd built was nothing but smoke and mirrors, and somewhere in the darkness of last night, I'd finally caught the scent of fire. The dinner table had become a battlefield, and Janet's voice was the first shot fired across its polished surface. Eleanor, dear, you've overcooked the chicken again. She dabbed her lips with a napkin, each movement precise and deliberate. Mark needs proper nutrition, especially with how hard he's working lately. I gripped my fork tighter, watching Mark's face for any reaction. He kept his eyes on his plate, pushing food around like a child avoiding vegetables. I think it's good, Ryan piped up, mouth full of the allegedly ruined chicken. Janet's smile could have frozen hell. That's because your palate hasn't been properly developed yet, sweetheart. Perhaps if your mother spent more time in the kitchen instead of running off to visit Susan every day. Mother, Mark's warning came too late. What? I'm simply pointing out that priorities seem misplaced lately. The house is a mess, dinner is subpar, and poor Ryan barely sees his mother. I set down my fork, the clink against china echoing in the sudden silence. Ryan sees me plenty, and my mother needs me. Of course she does, Janet cooed, reaching for her wine glass. But Mark needs you too, don't you, darling? Mark cleared his throat. Actually, I've been meaning to discuss something. He straightened his shoulders, a gesture I'd seen countless times before bad news. Mother's offered to help more around here, maybe take Ryan after school some days. The chicken turned to ash in my mouth. I don't need help. Don't be proud, Eleanor, Janet interjected. Everyone can see you're struggling. Those dark circles under your eyes, the state of the laundry room. I said I don't need help. My voice came out sharper than intended, making Ryan flinch. Mark's hand found mine under the table, but his grip felt like a warning rather than comfort. Honey, we're just trying to help, with the audit at work and everything else. What audit? The question hung between us like smoke. Janet's eyebrows shot up. Oh, hasn't Mark told you? The company's doing a complete financial review. It's been terribly stressful for him. No, I said slowly, watching Mark's face. He hasn't mentioned it. Well, perhaps if you asked about his day more often, instead of always talking about your mother's condition. May I be excused? Ryan interrupted, his plate half full. I nodded, grateful for the break in tension. He disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my inquisitors. Speaking of Susan, Janet continued, have you considered a care facility? The strain of caring for her is clearly affecting your domestic duties. The wine glass in my hand trembled. My domestic duties? Eleanor. Mark's voice carried that same gentle warning from this morning. Mother's just concerned. Yes, concerned. Janet reached across the table, her manicured fingers stopping just short of touching mine. Mark tells me you've been emotional lately, asking strange questions, having trouble sleeping. My eyes snapped to Mark. He had the decency to look away. I'm fine, I said, standing abruptly. I should check on Ryan. Sit down, Eleanor. Janet's command cracked like a whip. We're not finished. For the first time in 15 years, I looked at my mother-in-law. Really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and perfect makeup, I saw something predatory in her eyes. Actually, we are. I started clearing plates, my movements mechanical. I have to call my mother's nurse about tomorrow's schedule. Mark stood, blocking my path to the kitchen. About that, I think we should skip visiting Susan tomorrow. The company's having a dinner, and I need you there. Mother's already agreed to watch Ryan. Already agreed? The plates clattered as I set them down. When exactly did you plan all this? This morning, he said smoothly. When you were too busy to ask about my day. Janet's chair scraped back. I should go. Eleanor clearly isn't in a state to have a rational discussion. She kissed Mark's cheek, then turned to me. Do think about what we've said, dear. Everyone can see you're drowning. After she left, Mark and I stood in silence, the remains of dinner growing cold between us. You told your mother I've been emotional. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. He stepped closer, that familiar cologne making my stomach turn. I'm worried about you. We all are. Don't be. I moved past him, shoulder brushing his chest. I'm seeing things very clearly now. His hand caught my arm. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled, and for the first time it felt like Janet's. Nothing, dear. Nothing at all. Lily's coffee had gone cold, but her eyes remained hot with anger as I showed her Mark's company statements I'd found hidden in his home office. These numbers don't match what he reported last quarter, she said, tapping the paper with a manicured nail. Not even close. The cafe around us hummed with afternoon activity, providing perfect cover for this conversation. I'd chosen it specifically because it was across town, far from Janet's network of spies. I know, I said. my voice barely above a whisper. And look at the dates. Lily's breath caught. The day before your mother's surgery, when he said he couldn't be there because of that emergency board meeting. He was in Phoenix. The words tasted bitter. With someone named Olivia. A text lit up my phone. Janet, again. I turned it face down without reading it. Have you confronted him? Lily asked. What's the point? He'll just tell me I'm being paranoid. That's his favorite word lately. I wrapped my hands around my cup, seeking warmth that wasn't there. Besides, he's got Janet convinced I'm having some sort of breakdown. That manipulative bit. Eleanor? My heart stopped. That voice, I hadn't heard it in 15 years, but I'd know it anywhere. Derek stood beside our table, looking exactly like he had in high school, just with touches of grey at his temples. His presence felt like a punch to the gut. I thought that was you, he said, smiling that same crooked smile. How's Mark? Lily's eyes darted between us. She knew our history. The high school sweetheart Mark had saved me from, according to Janet's version of events. He's fine, I managed. How are you? Just made partner at Hamilton and Reed. He gestured to the papers on the table. Actually, we're handling the audit for Mark's company. The world tilted sideways. You're what? Small world, right? His expression shifted, becoming more serious. Listen, Eleanor. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. A text from Ryan's school. I have to go, I said, standing so quickly I nearly knocked over my coffee. Ryan's sick. Derek caught my arm as I moved past him. We should talk. About the audit. I pulled away. I can't. Lily gathered the papers, shoving them in my bag. I'll drive you. The ride to Ryan's school was silent until Lily finally spoke. That wasn't a coincidence, was it? Derek showing up? I don't know. My head was spinning. Nothing makes sense anymore. Ryan was pale when we picked him up, but not from illness. Mom, he whispered as we walked to the car. Grandma Janet came to school today. She talked to my teacher about you. My steps faltered. What? She said you're not well, that sometimes you might say strange things. His voice cracked. Are you sick like Grandma Susan? The parking lot swam before my eyes. Lily's hand found my shoulder, steadying me. Your mother's fine, she told Ryan firmly. Sometimes grown-ups just disagree about things. Back home, I tucked Ryan into bed with actual fever now, probably from stress. As I closed his door, voices drifted up from downstairs. She's becoming unstable, Mark. Janet's voice, in my house, again. First the paranoid accusations, now she's meeting with her ex-boyfriend. Olivia saw them together. My blood turned to ice. Olivia. The name from the Phoenix receipts. Keep your voice down, Mark hissed. Ryan's upstairs. We need to act now before she ruins everything. I've already spoken to Dr. Phillips about getting her evaluated. I must have made a sound because they both looked up. Mark's face showed genuine surprise. Janet's showed something else. Satisfaction. Eleanor, dear, she purred. We were just discussing... Get out. My voice was steel. Now, honey, Mark started, using his client voice again. Mother's just concerned. Get out. I descended the stairs slowly, deliberately. Both of you. Janet drew herself up. This is exactly what we're talking about. These emotional outbursts. I know about Phoenix, I said quietly. I know about Olivia. I know about the audit. And Derek, he's handling it now. Isn't that interesting? The color drained from Mark's face. Janet's hand flew to her throat. So yes, I continued, reaching the bottom step. Get out of my house, or the next conversation I have with Derek won't be about old times. They left, but Janet's parting smile told me this wasn't over. As I locked the door behind them, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from Derek. We really need to talk. There's more you should know. I stared at the message, feeling something shift inside me. The time for being a victim was over. Now I needed to become something else entirely. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me as I rushed toward my mother's room. Susan's nurse had called during my meeting with Derek, cutting short his revelations about Mark's company. I found her struggling to breathe, her usually strong hands trembling as they clutched the bed sheets. "Eleanor," she wheezed, "Janet was here." My blood froze. "When?" "Just before." She gestured weakly at the monitors beside her bed. She wanted to talk about Mark, about you. The steady beeping of machines filled the silence as I checked her medication chart. Numbers didn't add up, again, just like Mark's financial statements. "What did she say?" "She thinks..." Susan's breath caught. "She thinks you're unstable. Wanted my permission for something. I wouldn't..." The door opened behind me. Mark stood there, Janet hovering at his shoulder like a dark shadow. "I called them," the nurse explained, slipping past them. "As next of kin." "I'm her next of kin," I snapped. Janet's lips curved into that familiar serpentine smile. "Actually, dear, Mark has medical power of attorney now, for both you and Susan." The room tilted. "That's impossible." "You signed it last month," Mark said softly. "Remember? With the insurance papers." Memory flashed. A stack of documents, Mark's gentle insistence, my distracted signature while worried about Ryan's parent-teacher conference. "Dr. Phillips thinks your mother's condition is affecting your judgment," Janet continued. "The stress, the paranoia, it's all connected." Susan's monitor beeped faster. "Eleanor didn't... I never... Mother, please," I whispered, gripping her hand. "Save your strength." "Get out," Susan managed, glaring at Janet. "Both of you." Mark stepped forward. "Susan, we're only trying to..." I said, "Get out." The force of her words triggered a coughing fit. The nurse returned with Dr. Phillips, a man I'd never seen before. His eyes held no warmth as he reviewed the charts. "Mrs. Harrison," he addressed me, "perhaps we should step outside and discuss your mother's care. And yours." "I'm not leaving her." "Eleanor..." Mark's hand found my shoulder, heavy with false concern. "Think of Ryan. Think of how this behavior affects him." "My behavior?" I turned to face him fully. "You mean like questioning missing funds? Like asking about Phoenix?" His fingers dug into my flesh. "You're proving our point." "Mrs. Harrison," Dr. Phillips interrupted, "your husband mentions you've been experiencing paranoid delusions." "Ask Derek at Hamilton and Reed about delusions," I shot back. "Ask him about the audit." Mark's grip tightened painfully. "You've been talking to Derek?" A new voice cut through the tension. "She has." Lily stood in the doorway, phone in hand. "And I've been recording everything since I got here." Janet's composure cracked. "You can't..." "Can't what?" Lily stepped inside. "Document a conversation or prevent medical manipulation?" "This is a private family matter," Janet hissed. "Exactly." Lily's smile was razor-sharp. "That's why I called Eleanor's father. He's flying in tonight. You remember him, right, Janet? The federal judge?" The room went silent except for the steady beep of Susan's monitor. Mark's hand fell away from my shoulder. "We should discuss this elsewhere," Dr. Phillips suggested, suddenly less certain. "Yes," I agreed. "We should. After my father's legal team reviews those power of attorney documents, and the hospital records, and Mark's company audit." Janet recovered first. "You're making a mistake." "No," Susan's voice was weak but clear. "She's finally seeing clearly." They left, taking their false concern and veiled threats with them. Lily stayed by the door, still recording as Dr. Phillips hurried down the hall after them. "Your father's not really coming, is he?" Susan asked once we were alone. "No." I smoothed her blanket, hands shaking. "But they don't know that." "Clever girl." She squeezed my fingers. "Now, tell me about Derek and this audit." "Later." I checked her oxygen levels. "You need rest." "Eleanor." Her grip tightened. "Listen to me. Janet didn't just come to talk today. She wanted access to my estate planning documents. Asked about my safety deposit box." My heart stopped. "The one with evidence of what really happened at Mark's last company." She closed her eyes. "The real reason they moved here." Lily stepped closer. "I'm still recording." I looked between them. My best friend with her phone, my mother with her secrets, and thought about the flash drive Derek had tried to show me earlier. "Keep recording," I said. "I think we're finally getting to the truth." The safety deposit box key felt impossibly heavy in my palm as I followed the bank manager down the sterile hallway. Behind me, Olivia's heels clicked against marble floors. Janet's supposedly loyal friend, now unexpectedly my ally. "I should have told you years ago," she said softly, "when Mark first started working with Janet to push out the old board members." The manager unlocked the outer door, leaving us in the viewing room. I waited until his footsteps faded before speaking. "Why now?" Olivia's carefully maintained facade cracked. "Because Janet's planning to do to you what she did to Mark's first wife." The key slipped from my fingers, clattering against the metal table. "His what? You didn't know." It wasn't a question. "Of course you didn't. Janet made sure those records disappeared before your marriage." My phone buzzed, another message from Mark. I'd been ignoring them since leaving the hospital, each one growing increasingly desperate. The latest read, "Come home now, we need to talk about Ryan." "They're using my son as leverage," I said, voice hollow. Olivia nodded. "Janet's specialty. She'll convince the court you're unstable, unfit, just like she did with Rachel." The name hit like a physical blow. "Rachel?" "Mark's first wife, the one who supposedly had a nervous breakdown after embezzling company funds." Olivia's laugh was bitter. The perfect cover story for what really happened. My hand shook as I fitted the key into the box. Inside lay a USB drive and a stack of documents, Susan's insurance against the day she knew would come. "Janet visited Rachel in the hospital," Olivia continued, "right before she signed away her rights. Her fortune. Everything. The same hospital where Janet had tried to access my mother's records, where she'd arranged for that doctor to evaluate me." My phone buzzed again. A message from Lily. "Ryan's safe with me. Janet showed up at school again. Don't go home." The documents in my hand suddenly came into sharp focus. Bank statements, emails, photos. Evidence of a pattern stretching back years before I met Mark. "How many others?" I asked. "3 companies, 3 wives. You're not special, Eleanor. You're just the latest target." The truth settled like ice in my veins. Every criticism, every subtle undermining, every orchestrated failure. It hadn't been personal. It had been practice. My phone lit up with Mark's face. This time, I answered. "Where are you?" His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "With your past," I replied, "and your pattern." A sharp intake of breath. Then, "Whatever Olivia's told you." "Rachel says hello." The line went dead. Olivia touched my arm. "We should go. Janet has people at the bank." As if summoned by her words, voices echoed from the hallway. I recognized Janet's commanding tone, the manager's apologetic murmur. "The back exit," Olivia whispered, gesturing to a service door. "I'll stall them." I hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" "Because 20 years ago, I helped them destroy Rachel. I can't watch it happen again." The voices grew closer. I shoved everything into my bag, heart pounding. "Eleanor," Janet's saccharine voice carried through the door. "Darling, we're worried about you. Mark says you're not well." I backed toward the exit, watching Olivia straighten her shoulders and arrange her features into a mask of concern. She'd fooled them for 2 decades. She could buy me 5 minutes. "Tell Mark," I said quietly, "that Rachel kept copies." Understanding flickered in Olivia's eyes as she nodded. I slipped through the service door just as the main one opened. "Oh, Janet," I heard Olivia say, her voice breaking perfectly. "Thank goodness you're here. Eleanor was saying such strange things." The service corridor led to a back alley where Derek waited in his car, engine running. Another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "Ready?" he asked as I slid into the passenger seat. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Mark. "You have no idea what you're doing." I thought about Rachel, about Janet's other victims, about the carefully constructed cage they'd been building around me for years. "Actually," I said, "I finally do." Derek pulled away from the curb as Janet burst out of the bank, phone to her ear. In the rearview mirror, I watched her figure grow smaller, her power diminishing with every block we put between us. The game was changing, and this time, I knew all the players. The hospital room's fluorescent lights flickered as Susan's monitors screamed their warning. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching nurses rush past me while Mark's latest threat echoed in my head. "One signature, Eleanor. That's all it takes to end this." "Code blue," someone called out. "Clear the room." Derek pulled me back into the hallway as medical staff swarmed around my mother. Through the glass, I watched them work, their movements urgent and precise. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew everything about Rachel, about the others, and she still protected me." "Eleanor," Mark's voice cut through the chaos. He stood at the end of the hallway, Janet hovering behind him like a dark sentinel. "We need to talk about Ryan." My phone vibrated, a message from Lily. "They're trying to get emergency custody. Janet's judge friend fast-tracked it." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "Where's my son?" "Safe," Janet answered, stepping forward. "Away from your increasingly erratic behavior." "What she means," Mark added softly, approaching with his hands raised like I was a cornered animal, "is that Ryan's staying with us until you get help. Dr. Phillips has already prepared the commitment papers." The monitors in Susan's room suddenly went silent. The doctor emerged, his face grave. "Mrs. Harrison?" "No." The word tore from my throat. "No, I need to speak to her. She has to tell them." "Tell them what?" Mark was beside me now, his cologne suffocating. "About your conspiracy theories, your paranoid delusions about Rachel." "Rachel was real." My voice shook. "Just like the missing funds are real. Just like the voices you hear at night," Janet interrupted smoothly. "The ones that keep you up, making you spy on your loving husband." Derek stepped between us. "Back off, Janet." "Derek?" Mark's smile was razor sharp. "Still trying to save her after all these years. Tell me, does your law firm know you're sleeping with the client's unstable wife?" "What?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. "The hotel receipts," Mark continued. "The late-night meetings. Did you think we wouldn't find out?" Derek's face drained of color. "Eleanor, I can explain, but I was already backing away from all of them. My mind racing through every conversation, every secret meeting. Had Derek been working with them all along? Was this entire thing an elaborate trap?" "Security," Janet called out, her voice carrying that perfect note of concern. "My daughter-in-law is having another episode." Two guards appeared at the end of the hall. Behind them, Dr. Phillips approached with a syringe. "Just to help you calm down," he said soothingly. I turned to run, but Mark caught my arm. His grip was gentle, loving. The perfect concerned husband restraining his troubled wife. "Think about Ryan," he whispered. "Do you want him to remember his mother being dragged away? Or do you want to walk out of here with dignity?" Through the glass, I could see them covering Susan's body. All her evidence, all her secrets, dying with her. "The choice is simple," Janet added. "Sign the papers, get the help you need, or lose everything, including Ryan." The guards were closer now. Dr. Phillips uncapped the syringe. "Time to decide," Mark said softly. "Are you going to be Rachel, or are you going to be smart?" In that moment, I saw it all clearly. The perfect trap they'd constructed, fight back and prove I was unstable. Give in and lose everything. Either way, they won. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from an unknown number. "Rachel didn't die. She survived. And so will you." The guards reached for me as Dr. Phillips stepped forward with his syringe. Mark's grip remained gentle, loving, the concerned husband until the very end. I looked into his eyes, searching for any trace of the man I'd married. There was nothing there but calculated emptiness. "You're right," I said quietly. "I need to be smart." Janet's triumphant smile appeared just as I drove my elbow into Mark's solar plexus. He doubled over, his grip loosening just enough. I ran. Behind me, Janet's controlled facade finally cracked. "Stop her!" But I was already through the emergency exit, alarms blaring in my wake. They'd taken everything, my mother, my son, my life. but they hadn't taken my truth. And now, finally, I knew exactly how to use it. The annual shareholders' meeting buzzed with artificial pleasantries and expensive perfume. I stood in the shadows of the hotel ballroom, watching Mark work the crowd with his practiced charm. Janet floated nearby, her red dress a warning signal. "Ready?" Olivia appeared at my elbow, clutching her tablet. "Is she here?" "Front row." Olivia nodded toward a woman with silver-streaked hair. "Rachel flew in this morning. My mother's USB drive felt heavy in my pocket. 15 years of evidence waiting for this moment." Mark took the podium, adjusting his tie, his tell when he's nervous. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin..." Actually, I stepped into the light, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. "I'd like to say something first." Janet's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Mark's smile flickered but held. "Eleanor," he said smoothly, "this isn't the time for..." "For what? The truth?" I moved closer, each step deliberate. "About Phoenix, about Rachel, or about what really happened to my mother?" The crowd stirred. Rachel leaned forward, her face a mirror of my own determination. "Security!" Janet called out, but Olivia was faster. "Nobody moves," she announced, tapping her tablet. The screens behind Mark filled with documents. "Not until everyone sees exactly where their money's been going." Mark's facade cracked. "These are confidential, like the offshore accounts." I was at the podium now, close enough to smell his cologne. "Or the falsified audit reports, or maybe like Rachel's commitment papers." "She was unstable," Janet cut in, moving toward us. "Just like you're being unstable now." "Where's Ryan, Eleanor? Does he know his mother's having another breakdown?" "Ryan's safe," Lily's voice rang out from the back. "With his real grandmother's sister and the police." Mark lunged for the podium's laptop, but I was ready. "Looking for this?" I held up the USB drive. "Susan made copies. Lots of them. Dead women are clever that way." "You don't understand," he hissed, desperation replacing charm. "I did it for us, for our family." "Family?" Rachel stood, her voice steady. "Is that what you told the others too, Mark?" The room erupted in whispers. Janet's perfectly maintained composure slipped. "This is ridiculous," she announced. "These women are clearly disturbed. Dr. Phillips can confirm..." "Dr. Phillips confessed this morning." Derek stepped forward, legal papers in hand. "About the falsified psychiatric evaluations. About all of it." Mark's hands gripped the podium. "Whatever they're paying you..." "They're not paying me anything," Derek interrupted. "But the SEC is very interested in what I have to say." Cameras flashed as federal agents appeared at every exit. Janet's face went ash white. "It's over," I said quietly. "The money, the manipulation, all of it." "You stupid girl." Janet's voice trembled with rage. "You have no idea what you've done, after everything we gave you." "Gave me." My laugh felt foreign. "You took everything. My marriage, my mother, my son." "I took nothing," Mark snarled, mask finally shattering. "You were nothing before me, just like Rachel was nothing, just like..." His words cut off as Rachel stepped onto the stage, calm and regal. "Tell them about Phoenix, Mark. Tell them what really happened to the last woman who knew too much." The room held its breath. In the silence, I could hear Mark's world crumbling. "This isn't..." he started, then stopped, looking to Janet for rescue. But Janet was already backing away, her predator's instincts sensing the trap closing. "The truth," I said, turning to face the crowd, "is in these documents. Every transaction, every forged signature, every falsified report. But most importantly..." I met Rachel's eyes. "Every victim's story, starting with Phoenix." "You can't prove..." Mark grabbed my arm, but security was already moving. "Actually," Rachel smiled, "we can. Dead women might be clever, Mark, but surviving ones are dangerous." As they led Mark and Janet away, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only a hollow echo where 15 years of lies used to live. "Eleanor?" Lily appeared with my phone. "Ryan wants to talk to you." I took the phone, my son's voice washing over me like absolution. Behind me, Rachel spoke quietly with the FBI, while Olivia distributed USB drives to the board members. The truth was finally free. And so were we. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving me alone with the echo of the judge's decision. Mark and Janet's sentencing had been swift, clinical, like excising a tumor. I gathered my papers, fingers brushing against Susan's old safety deposit box key. "You didn't tell them everything." Rachel's voice carried across the empty benches. She moved closer, her heels clicking against marble. "About Phoenix, about what really happened to the others. Some truths aren't meant for courtrooms." I stood, facing the woman who'd blazed this trail before me. "Some are just for us." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Derek called, said you turned down the board position. It was never about power." My voice sounded stronger than I felt. "Besides, the company belongs to the survivors now. All of them." Through the courthouse windows, I watched Janet being led to awaiting prison transport. Her red dress had been replaced by orange, her perfect posture finally broken. Mark was already gone, whisked away to begin his sentence. "Mom?" Ryan appeared in the doorway with Lily, his backpack clutched tight. "Are we going home now?" Home. Not the pristine cage Mark had built, but the new apartment overlooking the park. A place without secrets. "Actually," Rachel said, "I thought we might all get dinner. There's someone you should meet." She hesitated. "The woman who sent you that text about me surviving. She was wife number 1. My breath caught. "There are more of us. Many more. We've been watching, waiting. Susan wasn't the only one keeping records." Ryan tugged my sleeve. "Can we get pizza?" The simple question broke something loose inside me. A laugh that felt like crying, or maybe the other way around. "Pizza sounds perfect," I said, ruffling his hair. "But first, we need to make one stop." The cemetery was quiet this time of day. Susan's grave, still fresh, bore none of the elaborate decorations Janet had insisted on for the funeral. Just a simple stone with words I'd chosen. She protected truth with silence and love with strength. I placed her old key on the headstone. "You can rest now, Mum. We all can. Eleanor." Derek's voice surprised me. He stood at a respectful distance, holding a familiar flash drive. "There's something you should know. That you were investigating Mark long before we met at the cafe." I didn't turn around. "Or that you orchestrated our reunion." "Both." He moved closer, but not too close. "And neither. The investigation was real, but seeing you again, that wasn't orchestrated. Some karma works on its own schedule." Ryan wandered between the headstones, giving us space with a child's instinctive understanding. "I thought about telling you," Derek continued. "Every time we met, every document I showed you, but you needed to find your own way out. Like Rachel did. Like all of them did." He placed the flash drive beside the key. "There's one file you haven't seen, about Janet's first husband, Mark's father." The pieces clicked into place. She did this before. History repeats until someone breaks the chain. He stepped back. "The file's yours if you want it, or we can let it stay buried." I stared at the flash drive, feeling the weight of more secrets, more vengeance. Then I looked at Ryan, innocent among the shadows of our past. "Some chains," I said quietly, "are broken by leaving them behind." I left the drive where it lay, next to the key that had unlocked my freedom. Susan would understand. Rachel waited by the cemetery gate with Lily, their shadows long in the setting sun. Beyond them, I could see other women gathering, survivors I hadn't known existed, each carrying their own story of escape. "Ready?" Lily asked as I approached. I looked back one last time at Susan's grave, at the pieces of the past I was choosing to leave behind. The truth had set us free, but it was our choice to stay that way. "Yes," I said, taking Ryan's hand. "I'm ready for pizza." We walked away together, a different kind of family forged in the ashes of the one that had tried to destroy us. Behind us, the key and flash drive gleamed in the fading light. Artifacts of a battle finally, completely won. Some victories, after all, are measured not in what we take, but in what we choose to leave behind.
The letter trembled in my hands as I stared at Joshua's familiar handwriting. 3 months after his death, and I was still finding pieces of him scattered throughout our home, or rather, what used to be our home before his parents took over. My name is Natalia, and at 29, I never expected to be a widow, let alone a servant in what was supposed to be my sanctuary. The vacuum hummed beneath my feet as I cleaned the living room carpet, trying to ignore Pamela's critical gaze from her perch on the sofa. "You missed a spot there, dear," she said, pointing with her perfectly manicured finger. "Joshua always appreciated a clean home. It's the least you can do to honor his memory." I bit my tongue, the way I had been doing for the past 3 months. The letter in my pocket felt heavy, like a secret wanting to break free. "Natalia!" Kevin's voice boomed from the study. "Where's my afternoon coffee?" "Coming right up," I called back, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling inside me. I switched off the vacuum and headed to the kitchen, where my best friend Kimberly sat at the counter, her presence my only lifeline to sanity these days. "You don't have to take this," she whispered, watching me prepare Kevin's coffee. "This whole family tradition thing is complete bullshit. What choice do I have?" I measured the coffee grounds carefully. They control everything since Joshua died. The house, the accounts, even his death benefits. "There has to be something we can do," Kimberly insisted, her eyes fierce with protective anger. The coffee maker gurgled to life as I pulled the letter from my pocket. "I found this while cleaning Joshua's old desk. It's dated just 2 weeks before the accident." Kimberly leaned forward, but before I could show her, Pamela's voice cut through the air. "Natalia, what's taking so long with that coffee?" I quickly tucked the letter away and poured the coffee into Kevin's favorite mug. As I carried it to the study, I could hear him on the phone, bragging about some investment. "That's right, doubled our money in just 2 months," he was saying. "Joshua's death benefits are working harder than he ever did." My hand tightened around the mug handle. I placed it on his desk, careful not to spill a drop, though part of me wanted to dump it in his lap. "Hold on, Jim." Kevin covered the phone. "Where are the biscuits? I always have biscuits with my afternoon coffee." "I'm sorry, we're out. I can run to the store." "Then what are you waiting for?" He waved his hand dismissively, returning to his phone conversation. Back in the kitchen, Kimberly was waiting with her car keys. "I'm driving you. You need to tell me about that letter." Once we were safely in her car, I pulled out the envelope. My hands shook as I read Joshua's words aloud. "My dearest Natalia, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. There's so much I haven't told you, things I've been working on in secret. Mom and Dad think they know everything about our finances, but they don't. Go to my office downtown, desk drawer 3B. The key is taped under your jewelry box. What you'll find there will change everything. I love you. Jay." "Holy shit," Kimberly breathed. "What's in his office?" "I don't know," I admitted, folding the letter carefully. His parents told me the office had been cleared out weeks ago. They said there was nothing important there. "And you believed them?" Kimberly made a U-turn, her face set with determination. "We're going there right now." "But the biscuits—" "Forget the damn biscuits. This is your chance, Nat. Whatever Joshua left for you, his parents obviously don't know about it, or they're hiding it from you." As we drove downtown, memories of Joshua flooded back. His gentle smile, his late nights working on his laptop, his excitement about some project he could never quite explain to me. He'd always said he was working on something big, something that would secure our future. "What if it's nothing?" I asked as we pulled up to his office building. "What if I'm getting my hopes up for nothing?" Kimberly parked the car and turned to face me. "Then at least you'll know, but something tells me Joshua wouldn't have written that letter if it wasn't important." I clutched my house keys, feeling the small key I'd found under my jewelry box pressing into my palm. Whatever was in drawer 3B, it was meant for me, not his parents. For the first time since Joshua's death, I felt a spark of hope. "Okay," I said, opening the car door. "Let's find out what my husband was hiding." The security guard barely glanced at us as we entered the office building. "Joshua's wife," was all I had to say, and he nodded with sympathy. Everyone here knew about the accident. Joshua's office was exactly as he'd left it. A thin layer of dust covered everything, but otherwise it felt like he might walk in at any moment. His coffee mug still sat on the desk, a ring of dried coffee staining the bottom. "Third drawer, B section," I muttered, moving behind his desk. My hands trembled as I inserted the key. "Someone's been here," Kimberly said, pointing to fresh scratches around the lock. "They tried to force it open." The drawer slid open with a soft click. Inside, beneath a stack of ordinary files, was a sleek laptop I'd never seen before, and a thick manila envelope. "Oh my God," I whispered, pulling out the envelope. Inside were dozens of documents, contracts, and what looked like patent applications, but it was a single USB drive that caught my attention. "Let's see what's on it," Kimberly said, reaching for the laptop. The computer came to life, displaying a video file. Joshua's face filled the screen, and my heart stopped. "Hi, honey," he said, smiling that crooked smile I missed so much. "If you're watching this, then, well, you know. First, I'm sorry. Sorry for keeping secrets. Sorry for not telling you everything. But I had to protect what I built. Mom and Dad, they've always been greedy. They would have tried to take control, just like they're probably doing now." Tears streamed down my face as he continued. "The company I've been building, Tech Fusion? It's worth millions, Nat, and it's all yours. Every share, every patent, everything. The documents in the envelope prove it. I made sure my parents couldn't touch any of it." "Holy shit," Kimberly breathed, scanning through the papers. "Nat, these are real. These are legitimate corporate documents." Joshua's voice grew serious. "Mom and Dad think they know everything about our finances, but this was my secret, my gift to you. Contact Brian. Yes, I know we haven't spoken to my brother in years, but he's different now. He's a corporate lawyer, and he'll help you handle everything." The video ended, and I sat there, stunned. Kimberly was already on her phone. "Brian's firm is only 20 minutes from here," she said. "I'm calling them now." An hour later, we sat in a sleek conference room, facing Joshua's brother Brian. The years had been kind to him. He looked more polished than I remembered, but his eyes were still kind. "Joshua reached out to me 6 months ago," Brian said, examining the documents. "He wanted everything ironclad, protected from our parents. These documents are legitimate, Natalia. You own Tech Fusion outright." "What exactly is Tech Fusion?" I asked. "A revolutionary AI security system. 3 major tech companies are already in a bidding war to buy it." Brian leaned forward. "We're talking serious money here, Natalia. Life-changing money." My phone buzzed. Another angry text from Pamela about the biscuits. I ignored it. "How much?" I asked. "Initial offers are around 30 million, but we could get more." The room spun. Kimberly grabbed my hand, steadying me. "Mom and Dad," I said. "They can't know. Not yet." Brian's expression darkened. "They've been horrible to you, haven't they?" "Joshua warned me they might be." "They've turned me into their maid," I said, my voice breaking. "They're living off Joshua's death benefits while I clean their toilets." "Not anymore," Brian said firmly. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll handle the sale, get everything in order. In the meantime, play along. Let them think they're still in control." As we left Brian's office, Kimberly hugged me tight. "Everything's about to change," she whispered. My phone buzzed again, Kevin this time. "Where are you?" "The house is a mess, and we're having guests for dinner." I texted back, "Sorry, the store was crowded. On my way." Kimberly drove me back, stopping at the store for those damn biscuits. As I walked into the house, Pamela was waiting, arms crossed. "Where have you been? This is unacceptable behavior." I lowered my eyes, playing the part of the dutiful daughter-in-law one last time. "I'm sorry. The lines were very long." "Well, don't just stand there. The guest bathroom needs cleaning, and Kevin wants his shirts ironed for tomorrow." "Of course," I said quietly, hiding my smile. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, everything would change. As I climbed the stairs with cleaning supplies, I touched the USB drive in my pocket. Joshua had given me one last gift, not just money, but freedom. And soon, very soon, I would use it. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and endured Pamela's constant criticism while secretly meeting with Brian and potential buyers. Every snide comment from my in-laws just added fuel to the fire burning inside me. "The offers have exceeded our expectations," Brian said during our third meeting. We sat in a private room at a cafe across town, far from any prying eyes. "Google is offering 45 million, Microsoft's at 48, but Meta just came in at 52. I nearly choked on my coffee. 52 million? And that's just the opening bid." Brian smiled, sliding a folder across the table. "They're desperate for Joshua's AI technology. We're in a perfect position to negotiate." Kimberly, who'd been quiet until now, leaned forward. "What about Pamela and Kevin? Any signs they suspect something?" "They're too busy planning their cruise," I said bitterly. "This morning, Pamela made me help her shop for new swimsuits while telling me how lucky I am to have such generous in-laws who let me live with them." "Speaking of which," Brian said, his expression turning serious, "I did some digging into their finances. They've been making extremely risky investments with Joshua's death benefits. They're one bad trade away from losing everything." A knock at the door made us all jump. A woman in a sharp business suit entered, followed by two men in similar attire. "Ms. Natalia?" She extended her hand. "I'm Sarah from Meta. These are our chief technology officers. We'd love to discuss tech fusion in detail." The next hour was a blur of technical terms and negotiations. The Meta team was clearly impressed by Joshua's work, and their enthusiasm showed in their final offer. 60 million, Sarah said finally, plus royalties on any future developments using the core technology. Brian squeezed my hand under the table, our agreed signal that this was a good deal. I took a deep breath. I accept. Papers were signed, hands were shaken, and just like that, I was a millionaire. As the Meta team left, I sat there, stunned. "You did it," Kimberly whispered, hugging me tight. "You actually did it." "We need to move fast," Brian said, already on his phone. "I'm having the money transferred to secure accounts. We should have everything in place by tomorrow." My phone buzzed, Kevin calling. I answered, keeping my voice meek. "Where are you? The gutters need cleaning before the rain starts." "I'll be right there," I said, fighting to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. "Just finishing up some errands." When I got home, Pamela was in the kitchen, going through travel brochures. "Oh good, you're back. The windows need washing and we're having the Hendersons over for dinner. I want everything perfect." "Of course," I said, heading upstairs to change into my cleaning clothes. As I passed Kevin's study, I heard him arguing on the phone. "What do you mean the investment failed? That was our cruise money." He paused, listening. "No, you don't understand. That was everything we had." I smiled to myself as I pulled on my old t-shirt. Perfect timing. That evening, as I served dinner to Pamela, Kevin, and their friends, I could see the strain on my in-laws' faces. Kevin barely touched his food, while Pamela's laugh was just a bit too loud, too forced. After the guests left, I was cleaning up when Kevin called me into his study. Pamela was there too, looking worried. "Natalia, dear," Pamela began, her voice sickly sweet. "We've been thinking, you've been such a help to us these past months. Such a good daughter-in-law. We've had some unexpected financial setbacks," Kevin added, looking uncomfortable. "Perhaps it's time we discussed a more formal arrangement for your services." "My services?" I kept my face neutral, though my heart was racing. "Yes, well, we thought we could offer you a small salary, in exchange for continuing to help around the house." I pretended to consider it. "That's very kind of you. Actually, I've been meaning to talk to you both about changes, too." "Changes?" Pamela's smile faltered. "Yes," I said, pulling out my phone. "I just need to make a quick call first. Brian, could you come over now?" "Yes, it's time." "Brian?" Kevin's face reddened. "What does my son have to do with this?" I smiled, feeling the power shift in the room. "Everything," I said softly. "He has everything to do with this." The doorbell rang, and for the first time since Joshua's death, I saw fear in Pamela's eyes. Brian strode into the study with the confidence of a man who knew he held all the cards. Behind him, Kimberly entered quietly, phone in hand, ready to record everything. "What's the meaning of this?" Kevin demanded, rising from his chair. "Sit down, Dad," Brian said coldly. You'll want to be sitting for this. I moved to stand beside Brian, straightening my back. No more hunching, no more submissive posture. Pamela must have sensed the shift because she reached for Kevin's hand. 3 months, I said, my voice steady. 3 months you've treated me like a servant in my own home. 3 months you've lived off Joshua's death benefits while making me clean your toilets. Now see here, Kevin started, but Brian cut him off. No, you see here. He pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the desk. Your investment accounts. Notice anything interesting? Kevin's face went pale as he scrolled through the numbers. Pamela leaned in, gasping. That's impossible, she whispered. The margins account. Wiped out, Brian confirmed. Every penny of Joshua's death benefits gone, but that's not even the best part. He looked at me, nodding. Joshua left me something, I said, enjoying the way they both flinched at their son's name. Something you didn't know about, something you couldn't steal. Tech Fusion, I continued, watching recognition dawn in Kevin's eyes. Ring any bells? The company you thought was just Joshua's little hobby? No, Kevin breathed. Yes, I smiled. I sold it today. To Meta, for $60 million. Pamela's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Nobody moved to clean it up. You're lying, she said, but her voice trembled. Kimberly stepped forward, holding up her phone. It's all on video. The negotiations, the sale, everything. Would you like to see? This is our house, Kevin sputtered, his face turning red. We control... Actually, Brian interrupted, producing another document. This house is in Joshua and Natalia's names. Your names aren't on any of the paperwork. Never were. But the mortgage payments, Pamela began, were made from Joshua's accounts, I finished. Accounts that I now control. Kevin stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. You ungrateful little... Careful, Dad, Brian warned. Everything's being recorded. And I'm sure the media would love to hear how you treated your widowed daughter-in-law. Silence fell over the room. I could hear the clock ticking, marking each second of their world crumbling around them. What do you want? Pamela finally asked, her voice small. I walked over to the window, looking out at the garden I'd been forced to maintain. I want you to know how it feels, to be helpless, to depend on someone else's mercy. You're throwing us out? Kevin's anger had turned to fear. No, I said, turning back to face them. I'm offering you jobs. Brian handed them each a contract, house manager positions, room, board, and a small salary in exchange for maintaining the property. You want us to be your servants? Pamela's voice rose in disbelief. I want you to understand consequences, I corrected her. You have 2 choices. Sign the contracts and stay on as paid staff, or leave now with nothing. Your accounts are empty, your credit cards are maxed out, and your reputations won't survive the scandal when I go public with how you treated me. Kevin flipped through the contract, his hands shaking. This is insane. We're your family. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Family doesn't treat each other like slaves. Family doesn't steal from each other. You stopped being family the day you turned me into your maid. How long? Pamela whispered, staring at the contract. 1 year, I said. Consider it a learning experience. Kevin slumped in his chair, defeated. We don't have a choice, do we? There's always a choice, Brian said. Just like you chose to treat Natalia the way you did. Kimberly stepped forward, placing 2 pens on the desk. Tick-tock, the offer expires in 5 minutes. Pamela moved first, reaching for a pen. Kevin, she said softly. We have to. I watched as they signed the contracts, their signatures shaky but legible. As Brian collected the documents, I picked up Pamela's fallen coffee cup. You missed a spot, I said, echoing her words from so many times before. The cleaning supplies are under the sink. Better get started. I like my coffee at 7 a.m. sharp. As I walked out of the study, I heard Pamela begin to cry. But for the first time since Joshua's death, I felt nothing but satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring a new day, new rules, and a very different kind of family tradition. 7 a.m. sharp, my bedroom door opened to reveal Pamela, carrying a silver tray with coffee and breakfast. Her hands trembled slightly as she set it down. Good morning, she said stiffly. She wore the uniform I'd provided, simple black pants and a white button-down shirt. No more designer outfits. The eggs look a bit overdone, I said, channeling her previous criticisms. And is this coffee fresh ground? Her jaw tightened. I'll do better tomorrow. See that you do. I took a sip of coffee. Where's Kevin? Cleaning the pool, as requested. Through the window, I could see Kevin struggling with the pool net, his golf buddies walking past the house, pretending not to notice. Karma had a way of being perfectly poetic. The contractor will be here at 9, I told Pamela. I'm having the guest house renovated into my home office. You and Kevin will need to clear out your things. But where will we sleep? Her composed facade cracked slightly. The servants' quarters above the garage have been prepared. I smiled. I believe you had them built last year for me? A knock at the door saved her from responding. Kimberly walked in, carrying shopping bags. Ready for our day out? She asked, deliberately ignoring Pamela. Just let me finish breakfast. I turned to Pamela. The bathrooms need cleaning before you start on lunch, and Kevin should trim the hedges after he finishes with the pool. As soon as Pamela left, Kimberly burst out laughing. God, their faces! But are you sure this isn't too much? I set down my coffee cup. You didn't see how they treated me those first weeks after Joshua died, when I was still in shock, grieving. Pamela actually timed my bathroom breaks. Speaking of bathrooms, Kimberly said, wait until you see what I bought for your master bath renovation. Pure luxury. We spent the morning with contractors and designers, planning the house's transformation. I wanted every trace of Pamela's taste erased, every room reimagined. By lunch, the plans were set. When we returned, Kevin was red-faced from yard work, his expensive golf clothes stained with grass and sweat. Pamela was in the kitchen, burning her third attempt at lunch. Is something wrong with the meal? I asked, watching her scrape burnt chicken into the trash. I've never really cooked before, she admitted. We always had... She stopped herself. Had me to cook for you? I finished. Well, now's your chance to learn. There are cooking tutorials on YouTube. I expect dinner to be perfect. That evening, I invited Brian over to review the renovation plans. We sat in the living room while Pamela served us wine, the same wine she used to criticize me for pouring incorrectly. The contractors start tomorrow, I told him. Full renovation, top to bottom. Mom, Brian called out as Pamela turned to leave. The wine glass isn't filled to the proper level. Remember how you always insisted on perfect pours? Pamela's hands shook as she topped off his glass. Have they said anything? Brian asked after she left. About Joshua? About how they treated you? Not yet. I swirled the wine in my glass. But it's only been a day. A crash from the kitchen interrupted us. We found Kevin helping Pamela clean up a dropped casserole dish, both of them on their knees picking up pieces. I'm sorry, Pamela said quickly. I'll make something else. No, I said, watching them. Order pizza, but it comes out of your salary. Later that night, as I got ready for bed, I heard them moving their things to the garage apartment. Their muffled arguments drifted through the walls, Pamela crying, Kevin trying to quiet her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my heart skipped a beat. It was from a dating app I'd installed earlier that week. Hi, I'm Ronald. Your profile caught my eye. Would love to chat if you're interested. His picture showed a kind face, warm eyes. Nothing like Joshua, but maybe that was good. I started to type a response, then hesitated. Another crash from outside, followed by Kevin cursing about the stairs. I walked to the window and watched them struggling with their luggage in the dark. For a moment, I felt a twinge of guilt. Then I remembered Pamela making me serve dinner to her bridge club while still wearing my black morning dress. Kevin forcing me to wash his car in the rain because he had an important meeting the next day. I looked back at my phone, at Ronald's smiling face, and typed, Hi, Ronald. I'd love to chat. From below, I heard Pamela's voice. Kevin, we have to make this work. We have nowhere else to go. I closed my curtains and hit send on my message. Tomorrow would bring more changes, more renovation plans, more shifts in power. But for now, I had reclaimed my space, my dignity, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at happiness. 2 weeks into the renovation, I sat across from Ronald at a quiet Italian restaurant, trying not to compare him to Joshua. He was different, softer around the edges, with laugh lines around his eyes, and a gentle way of speaking that put me at ease. "So," he said, refilling my wine glass, "you mentioned you're renovating your house?" "Complete overhaul," I smiled. My in-laws had interesting taste. Had? They still live with me, actually. They work as my house managers now. I watched his reaction carefully. Ronald raised an eyebrow. That sounds like there's quite a story there. You have no idea. My phone buzzed. A text from Pamela asking about tomorrow's menu. I ignored it. "I'd love to hear it sometime," he said, not pushing. "When you're ready." Before I could respond, a familiar voice cut through the restaurant's quiet atmosphere. "Natalia? Is that you?" I turned to see Kevin's golf buddy Thomas and his wife approaching our table. Their faces showed a mix of curiosity and barely concealed glee at catching me on a date. "Hello, Thomas," I said calmly. "Yes, I'm having dinner with Ronald." "Ronald, these are old family friends." "Oh, how lovely," Thomas's wife cooed with fake sympathy. "It's so good to see you moving on. And how are Pamela and Kevin enjoying their new position?" "They're adapting," I said firmly. "Though I'm sure you already knew that, since you haven't returned their calls or invited them to golf lately." Thomas's smile faltered. They made their excuses and hurried away. "Okay," Ronald said after they left. "Now I really need to hear this story." Back at the house, the renovation crews had finished for the day. The place was transforming. Gone were Pamela's awful floral wallpapers and Kevin's dark wood paneling. In their place, clean lines and bright spaces emerged. "Coffee?" I offered Ronald as we walked through the foyer. "I'd love some." We headed to the kitchen, where we found Pamela organizing the pantry. She straightened up quickly when she saw us. "Would you make us coffee, please?" I asked her. "And some of those cookies you baked earlier?" "Of course," she said quietly, avoiding Ronald's curious gaze. As she worked, I gave Ronald the tour, showing him the changes in progress. When we reached Joshua's old study, soon to be my new library, he stopped at a photo on the wall. "Is this your late husband?" "Yes," I said softly. "That's Joshua." "He had kind eyes," Ronald observed. Before I could respond, Kevin appeared in the doorway. "The evening maintenance is complete," he reported stiffly. "Will there be anything else?" "No, thank you. You and Pamela can retire for the evening." After they left, Ronald turned to me. "That was your father-in-law, the same man who used to make you clean his pool? Kimberly told you?" He nodded. "Some of it. She's protective of you." We settled in the living room with our coffee. Through the window, I could see lights on in the garage apartment where Pamela and Kevin now lived. "They were cruel to me," I said finally. "After Joshua died, they took everything, made me their servant. Now they're learning how that feels." "And how does it feel, getting your revenge?" I considered his question. "Honestly, sometimes I feel powerful, sometimes I feel guilty. Mostly I feel tired." "Revenge is exhausting," he said, taking my hand. "Trust me, I know. My ex-wife cheated on me with my best friend. I spent 2 years making their lives miserable through mutual friends and social media before I realized I was only hurting myself." "What did you do?" "I let go. Not for them. They didn't deserve forgiveness. I did it for me." A crash from the kitchen interrupted us. We found Pamela cleaning up a broken coffee cup, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she kept saying. "I'm so sorry." Something in her voice was different. This wasn't about the cup. "Go to bed, Pamela," I said, softer than usual. "We'll deal with this in the morning." After she left, Ronald helped me sweep up the remaining pieces. "You know," he said carefully, "there's a difference between justice and cruelty. From what I've seen tonight, you're walking that line pretty carefully." I picked up the broken cup handle. It was from the set Joshua's parents had given us as a wedding gift. "Would you like to have dinner again?" I asked, changing the subject. He smiled. "I'd like that very much." Later, after Ronald left, I stood in my transformed home. The walls were different, the furniture was changing, But something else was shifting too. Maybe it was me. My phone buzzed with a text from Pamela. I truly am sorry, not just about the cup. I stared at the message for a long time before turning off my phone without replying. Tomorrow was another day. Another chance to walk that line between justice and cruelty, between holding on and letting go. The table needs to be perfect, I told Pamela as she arranged the place settings. Everyone's coming for dinner tonight. Everyone? Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted a fork. Brian, Kimberly, Ronald, and you and Kevin will be serving, of course. She nodded, her face pale. It had been 3 months since they'd started working for me, and tonight would be the first formal dinner party in the newly renovated house. Kevin, I called out. The wine needs to be opened to breathe. He appeared from the kitchen, wearing the server's jacket I'd required for the evening. The past months had changed him, his arrogant stride replaced by a careful shuffle, his booming voice now barely above a whisper. "Which wines would you prefer?" he asked. "The ones you used to save for your golf buddies." I smiled. "You know, the ones I wasn't allowed to touch?" The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. Brian arrived first, then Kimberly. Ronald came last, carrying flowers. "The house looks amazing," Kimberly said, turning in a circle to take in the transformed space. Nothing like the funeral parlor vibe it had before. Pamela, passing with appetizers, flinched at the comment. "Shall we move to the dining room?" I gestured to my guests. "Pamela and Kevin have prepared a special meal." We settled around the table, the same table where I'd once served Pamela's bridge club while fighting back tears. Now she stood against the wall, waiting to serve, while Kevin poured wine with shaking hands. "To new beginnings," Brian raised his glass. "And to justice served." "Speaking of justice," Kimberly said, "I ran into the Hendersons at the club. They were asking about you two." She looked pointedly at Pamela and Kevin. "I told them you were exploring new career opportunities." Kevin nearly dropped the wine bottle. "First course, please," I said smoothly. As Pamela served the soup, Ronald caught my eye. He'd been quiet, watching everything with those thoughtful eyes of his. "How are you finding your new roles?" he asked Kevin suddenly. The room went silent. Kevin stood frozen, soup tureen in hand. "We're grateful for the opportunity," he managed. "Grateful?" Brian scoffed. "Like you were grateful to have Natalia as your personal servant after her husband, your son, died?" "Brian," I warned, but he wasn't finished. "Do you know she lost weight that first month because she was too busy serving you to eat? That she cried herself to sleep while you planned luxury cruises with Joshua's money?" "That's enough," I said firmly, but the damage was done. Pamela burst into tears and fled the room. Kevin set down the tureen with a clatter. "May I speak?" he asked, his voice rough. I nodded, curious. "We were wrong," he said simply. "We were cruel and selfish and wrong. Losing Joshua, it broke something in us. We took our grief out on Natalia because she was there, because she reminded us of him, because we could." "And that makes it okay?" Kimberly demanded. "No," Kevin said. "Nothing makes it okay. But these past months, serving others, being humbled, we understand now what we did to her, what we became." Ronald reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it gently. "Pamela," I called out, "come back in here." She returned, wiping her eyes, trying to maintain dignity in her uniform. "Do you agree with Kevin?" I asked her. "Yes," she whispered. "Every day, doing the things we forced you to do. I think about how we treated you, how we dishonored Joshua's memory. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know we are truly sorry." The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. The air had shifted like a storm passing. "Sit down," I said finally. "Both of you." "What?" Kevin looked confused. "There are 2 empty chairs. Sit down and eat with us." As they hesitantly took their seats, Ronald smiled at me. He understood what was happening, what needed to happen. "To new beginnings," he echoed Brian's toast, but his eyes held a different meaning. "And to family," I added, surprising myself, however broken or rebuilt it might be. Pamela started crying again, but this time she was smiling through her tears. Kevin stared at his plate, shoulders shaking slightly. "Don't think this means you're off the hook," I said, keeping my voice firm. "You still have 9 months on your contract." "We know," Kevin said quietly, "and we'll honor it, every day of it." "But maybe," Ronald suggested, "with a few family dinners along the way?" I looked around the table, at Brian's reluctant acceptance, Kimberly's protective concern, Ronald's gentle encouragement, and my in-laws' genuine remorse. "Maybe," I agreed. "We'll see." The rest of dinner passed in a strange new harmony. Not forgiveness exactly, but something like understanding, something like healing. The autumn breeze rustled through the garden as I watched Pamela teaching Ronald's daughter, Emma, how to plant tulip bulbs. The little girl's laughter carried across the yard, reminding me of lighter days. "Coffee?" Kevin appeared beside me on the porch, holding 2 steaming mugs. His contract had ended last week, but he and Pamela had asked to stay on, with adjusted terms and proper salaries. "Thanks." I accepted the cup. "She's good with Emma." "She always wanted a granddaughter," Kevin said softly. We both did. The unspoken hung between us, Joshua's children who would never be. But the pain felt different now, worn smooth like a river stone. "Natalia!" Ronald called from the driveway. "The movers are here!" I stood up as the moving truck backed in. After dating for almost a year, Ronald and Emma were finally moving in. The house had plenty of room, especially since Pamela and Kevin had insisted on staying in the garage apartment even after their contract ended. "Where do you want these boxes?" one of the movers asked. Before I could answer, Pamela was there, directing traffic with the efficiency she once used to criticize my housekeeping. "The labeled ones go upstairs, kitchen items in the back hall. Kevin, could you show them?" I watched them work together, this strange family we'd become. Brian arrived with lunch for everyone, and Kimberly showed up with champagne, for later. "You okay?" Ronald asked, slipping his arm around my waist. "Just thinking," I said. "A year ago, I was serving them. Now look at us." "Mom!" Emma called out to me. She'd started using that term last month, and it still made my heart skip. "Can we plant these purple ones too?" "They're called crocuses, dear," Pamela explained, then looked at me uncertainly. "If that's all right, Natalia?" I nodded, watching Emma drag Pamela back to their gardening project. Ronald squeezed my hand and went to help with the boxes. Later, as everyone gathered in the kitchen for lunch, I found myself standing in Joshua's old study, now a bright, airy library. His picture still hung on the wall, but it was joined by others. Emma's school photo, a shot of Ronald and me at the beach, a group picture from Brian's birthday party. "We miss him too," Pamela said quietly from the doorway. "Every day." "I know," I turned to face her. "He would have loved Emma." "Natalia." She stepped into the room, wringing her hands the way she did when nervous. "Kevin and I have been talking. We want to give you something." She pulled out an envelope. Inside was a deed. They were signing their old house over to me. "We can't change what we did," she said, her voice breaking. "But we can try to make things right. Sell it, keep it, whatever you want. It's yours." I stared at the paper, remembering all the pain, the anger, the sweet taste of revenge that had turned bitter in my mouth. "Keep it," I said finally. "But use it for something good. Maybe a shelter for widows who don't have anywhere else to go." Pamela's eyes filled with tears. "You're a better person than we ever were." "No," I shook my head. "I'm just tired of holding on to hurt." "Cake time!" Emma burst into the room. "Mom, Ronald says we can't cut it without you." In the kitchen, everyone had gathered around a cake decorated with a simple, "Welcome home." Kevin was attempting to open the champagne while Brian teased him about his technique. Kimberly and Ronald were arguing good-naturedly about furniture placement. "Speech!" Brian called out as I entered. I looked around at these people, my people, the family I'd lost, the family I'd found, the family I'd built from the ashes of grief and revenge. "A year ago," I began, "I thought family was about power, about who controlled whom. I wanted revenge, and I got it. But somewhere along the way, I learned that real family isn't about power at all. It's about growth, about change, about learning to be better than we were yesterday. "Hear, hear!" Brian raised his glass. "To family," Ronald said, pulling me close. "To family," everyone echoed. Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Can we cut the cake now?" Laughter filled the kitchen, real laughter, not the strained kind from before. As I cut the first slice, I caught Pamela's eye. She nodded slightly, understanding passing between us. We'd never forget the past, but we'd chosen not to be imprisoned by it. "Mom," Emma said seriously, "Grandma Pamela says we can plant a whole rainbow of flowers in spring." "Grandma Pamela?" I raised an eyebrow at Pamela, who looked terrified I might object. "A whole rainbow sounds perfect," I said, and watched joy bloom across both their faces. This, I realized, was better than revenge. This was redemption. This was peace.
The spotlight burns my eyes as I grip the microphone, but it's the only honest thing in this room. My fingers trace the cool metal stand while I scan the crowd at the Blue Note, searching for familiar faces. Tonight marks my first performance since Lily's birth, and the energy crackling through my veins isn't just from the usual pre-show jitters. I'm Hazel, and music has always been my truth. Until now, I never had to defend that truth to anyone. The band starts our opening number, and I lose myself in the melody. Jazz has a way of wrapping around you like smoke, making everything else disappear. For 3 minutes and 42 seconds, I'm free. No diapers to change, no bottles to warm, no expectations to meet. Then I see him. Ryan slides into a front row seat, his presence as jarring as a wrong note in a perfect chord. He wasn't supposed to be here tonight. He promised to stay home with Lily, said I deserved this night to myself, but there he sits, wearing that pressed blue shirt that means business meetings and serious discussions. I finish the song on autopilot, my heart hammering against my ribs. During the applause, I catch Mia's worried glance from behind her piano. She knows Ryan's presence can't mean anything good. "Thank you all," I say into the mic, forcing a smile. "We're going to take a quick break." Before I can reach the edge of the stage, Ryan's already standing there, hands in his pockets, his tell for when he's about to say something I won't like. "We need to talk," he says, reaching for my elbow. "I'm in the middle of a set." "It's important." His fingers tighten slightly. "About our future." The green room feels smaller than usual as he closes the door behind us. My sequined dress catches the dim light, throwing scattered reflections on the walls like tiny distress signals. "Where's Lily?" I ask. "With Mom and Dad. They're more than happy to help," which is actually what I wanted to discuss. He leans against the makeup counter, blocking my escape route. "They've offered to help us financially, so you can focus on being a mother." The words hit me like ice water. Being a mother doesn't mean I have to stop being myself. "Nobody's saying that, honey." His smile doesn't reach his eyes. But you have to admit, trying to juggle everything isn't working. The late nights, the irregular schedule, it's not fair to Lily. Not fair to Lily or not fair to you. Don't be difficult, Hazel. Mom and Dad are offering us a fresh start. They can help manage your career, handle the business side of things. You could still perform occasionally, but in a more controlled way. The mirror behind him shows my reflection, and I barely recognize myself. The woman staring back looks trapped, cornered. "And what about what I want?" "What you want?" He laughs, but there's no warmth in it. "What about what's best for our family, for our daughter?" Through the thin walls, I hear the band starting up again. They're covering for me, buying time, but the message is clear. I need to make a choice. "I have to get back on stage," I say, moving toward the door. Ryan steps in front of me. "We're not done discussing this." "Yes, we are." I meet his gaze. "For now." As I push past him, his words follow me like a shadow. "You can't keep running from reality, Hazel. Sooner or later, you'll have to grow up." Back under the spotlight, I grip the microphone again, but this time it feels different. The metal is cold and foreign in my hands, like everything else in my life is becoming. The audience waits, expectant, unaware of the fault lines cracking beneath my feet. I open my mouth to sing, but for the first time in my life, I'm not sure what truth will come out. The Sunday brunch table feels like a battlefield, with Doris's china plates as landmines and Harold's investment proposals as ammunition. I watch them pass the syrup while they pass judgment, their smiles sharp as razor blades. "The market's absolutely perfect right now," Harold says, cutting into his waffle with surgical precision. "With Hazel's talent and our connections, we could triple her income within a year." Ryan beams at his father, while I feel Lily squirm in my lap. She's picking up on the tension, the way babies do. 3 months old and already more perceptive than her father. "I appreciate the offer," I say, bouncing Lily gently, "but I'm happy with my current management." Doris reaches across the table, her manicured hand covering mine. "Darling, we're family. Who better to trust with your future than family?" The word trust coming from her mouth tastes like poison. I pull my hand away, pretending to adjust Lily's bib. "More coffee?" Ryan stands abruptly, already reaching for my cup, his tell when he's trying to diffuse a situation. "I should check on the quiche," Doris announces, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she retreats to the kitchen. Harold leans forward, his voice dropping. "Ryan tells me you're still performing 4 nights a week? That must be challenging with a newborn." I manage, "But should you have to?" He spreads his hands in a gesture of false concern. "Our offer would give you more time with Lily. Isn't that what matters most?" Before I can respond, my phone buzzes. It's Mia. 911. Call me ASAP. "Excuse me," I say, standing with Lily. "Diaper change." In the powder room, I balance Lily on the changing table and call Mia. "They're making moves behind your back," she says without preamble. "Sam just called. Ryan's been meeting with Vertex management." My stomach drops. Vertex is notorious for buying out artists' rights, stripping them of creative control. "How do you know?" "Sam's cousin works there. They're drafting contracts, Hazel. Big ones." Lily starts fussing, and I cradle her closer. "Ryan wouldn't." "Wake up! He already is." Through the door, I hear Doris's voice. "She just needs a gentle push in the right direction. Every mother struggles with letting go." I end the call and step into the hallway, where Ryan and his parents huddle in conversation. They scatter like cockroaches when they see me. "Everything okay?" Ryan asks, too casually. "Perfect." I hand him Lily. "Actually, I just remembered I have a meeting with the band. New set list." "Now?" His face tightens. "It's Sunday brunch. Music doesn't take weekends off." I grab my purse, already heading for the door. Neither do lies, apparently. What's that supposed to mean? But I'm already gone, the sound of Lily's crying following me out to the car. My hands shake as I grip the steering wheel, but I force myself to drive normally past their windows. Let them think I'm just being difficult. Let them think they still have the upper hand. At the coffee shop where Mia waits, I order the strongest espresso they have. My friend's face is grim as she slides a folder across the table. "Sam got copies," she says. "It's worse than we thought." The documents inside detail a complete takeover of my career, performance rights, royalties, creative control, all tied up in legal language that makes my head spin. "They need my signature," I say, but even as the words leave my mouth, I remember signing papers Ryan had brought home last week. "Insurance documents," he'd said. "Check the last page," Mia says quietly. There it is, my signature on a preliminary agreement dated 5 days ago. The coffee turns to acid in my stomach. "I can fight this," I say, but my voice sounds hollow. "You'll need proof of coercion and deep pockets." I think of Lily, of the life I want for her. Not this web of manipulation masked as family loyalty. Not this slow suffocation disguised as support. Then I'll get proof. I close the folder, my mind already racing ahead. And I'll make them regret ever thinking they could own me. Mia's eyes widen slightly. Hazel? No, I cut her off. They want to play family? Fine. Let's see how well they handle a real family crisis. As I drive home, I think about the careful facade Ryan and his parents have built. How satisfying it will be to watch it crumble piece by precious piece. They think they're protecting their investment, but they've forgotten something crucial. Cornered animals fight the hardest, and I'm just getting started. Ryan's laptop sits open on his desk, like a confessional, the blue light painting shadows across his home office. 3 a.m., and here I am, hands trembling as I scroll through emails I shouldn't be reading. Lily's midnight feeding gave me the perfect cover. Ryan sleeps like the dead after taking his anxiety medication. The first email makes my stomach turn. Regarding artist management acquisition, H. Morris. My maiden name, reduced to a business transaction. There are dozens more, spanning months. Timeline confirmed for contract execution. Preliminary paperwork filed. Projected earnings report attached. A new message from Doris catches my eye. Remember, darling, this is for her own good. Artists need guidance, just like I needed it back then. The floor seems to tilt beneath my feet. Back then? I dig deeper, finding buried correspondence about Doris's own failed music career 30 years ago. The pieces click together with sickening clarity. This isn't just about control. It's about reliving her own crushed dreams through me. A floorboard creaks behind me. Couldn't sleep? Ryan's voice is thick with artificial drowsiness. I close the laptop slowly, turning to face him. Just checking tour dates. At 3 a.m.? He leans against the doorframe, trying to focus his eyes. On my work computer? You're right, silly me. I move to pass him, but he catches my arm. While you're here, he says, we should discuss the Vertex meeting tomorrow. My pulse quickens. What Vertex meeting? Did I forget to mention it? His grip tightens slightly. Just a casual lunch. You, me, Harold, and their legal team. Legal team? I keep my voice neutral, though rage burns in my chest. For lunch? Standard procedure. He releases my arm, swaying slightly. They're very interested in your potential. My potential? I laugh, and it sounds like breaking glass. Or my profit margins? His medication-addled brain takes a moment to process my tone. Why are you being difficult about this? I saw the emails, Ryan. The words hang between us like smoke. His face shifts from confusion to understanding to something darker. You had no right. No right? My voice rises despite myself. Like you had no right to sell me off to Vertex? To let your parents orchestrate this whole thing? Keep your voice down, he hisses, glancing toward Lily's room. You're being hysterical. Hysterical? You forged my signature. His expression hardens. I did what was necessary. You're too emotional to make these decisions. These decisions? I step closer, forcing him to meet my eyes. About my life? My career? Our life, he corrects. Our future. Everything I've done is for us. No. The clarity of the moment is stunning. Everything you've done is for you, for your parents, for their twisted need to control everything they touch. He reaches for me again, but I dodge his grasp. Hazel, you're not thinking clearly. Let's talk in the morning when I'm more compliant. I grab my phone from the desk. When Doris and Harold are here to help you manipulate me, don't be dramatic. His words slur slightly. Where are you going? To check on our daughter. I pause at the door. And Ryan, call your lawyer. You'll need one. I hear him fumbling with his phone as I walk away, probably calling his parents. Let them come. Let them try to contain this. In Lily's room, I gather essentials with mechanical precision. Diapers, formula, the stuffed rabbit she can't sleep without. My baby stirs but doesn't wake as I lift her from the crib. "It's okay, sweet girl," I whisper. "Mama's got you." My hands shake as I text Mia. "Need that spare room now." Her response is immediate. "On my way." Through the wall, I hear Ryan's muffled voice. "Mom, she knows." "No, I don't know how much." "Yes, I took my pills." "What do you mean? Contain it." I cradle Lily closer, her warm weight anchoring me to reality. They thought they could own me, control me, break me down into manageable pieces, but they forgot something crucial about musicians. We know how to read between the lines, how to hear the notes that aren't being played, and right now, every silent note is screaming for revenge. Through the window, I see Mia's headlights cutting through the darkness. It's time. They wanted to write my story for me, but they're about to learn what happens when you try to cage a song. The night air hits my face as I step outside, carrying my daughter and my fury into the waiting darkness. Behind me, Ryan's voice rises in panic, but I don't look back. Some bridges are meant to burn. The recording studio feels different at midnight, emptier, colder. I sit at the mixing board, replaying the same 30 seconds of Ryan's biggest client's new single, searching for the perfect flaw to exploit. Something subtle enough to pass quality control, but devastating enough to matter. Sam leans against the door frame, his usual steady presence now tinged with concern. "You sure about this, Hazel? Once we alter these masters..." They altered my life without asking. I adjust a frequency, introducing a nearly imperceptible distortion. Fair's fair. There's fair, and then there's career suicide. He moves closer, lowering his voice. Ryan's lawyers called the label again today. My fingers freeze over the controls. What did they want? To discuss your mental state and its impact on your ability to perform. He hands me a paper cup of coffee. They're playing dirty. They haven't seen dirty yet. I take a sip, but it tastes like ash. "Did you get what I asked for?" Sam pulls out a USB drive. "Everything from Harold's private server. But Hazel, some of this stuff, it goes beyond your situation." The drive feels impossibly heavy in my palm. "What do you mean?" Doris wasn't just a failed singer. She was systematically pushed out of the industry 30 years ago by Harold. My stomach lurches. Her own husband? Before he was her husband, he was her manager first. Sam's voice drops further. "Sound familiar?" Before I can respond, my phone buzzes. Mia's text makes my blood run cold. "Ryan at my place, looking for you and Lily, bringing cops." I have to go. I grab my bag, but Sam catches my arm. There's more. The pattern repeats. Harold does this to talented women, breaks them down, then builds them back up under his control. Doris wasn't the first. You won't be the last. The implications hit me like a physical blow. How many? At least 5 that I can document. All rising stars. All eventually disappeared from the industry. Most ended up married to business associates of Harold's. Through the studio window, I see headlights sweep across the parking lot. Ryan's car. "Back door," Sam whispers, already moving. "I'll stall them." I slip through the dark hallways, my heart thundering. In the alley behind the studio, I call Mia. "Is Lily okay?" "Safe with my sister," she answers. "But Hazel, they're saying you're unstable, that you kidnapped her. They're building a case." A laugh bubbles up, bitter as medicine. "Of course they are. It's what they do. Break you down, make you doubt yourself, then sweep in to help." "What are you going to do?" Through the back door, I hear Ryan's voice. "She's been acting erratic, officer. We're just concerned for our daughter's safety." My fingers tighten around the USB drive. I'm going to break their whole system down. "Hazel, no, listen. This isn't just about me anymore. They've done this before. They'll do it again. Someone has to stop them." I end the call and slip deeper into the shadows as footsteps approach the back door. My mind races through possibilities, through the names and dates Sam mentioned. Other women, other lives destroyed, other daughters who might one day face the same manipulation. My phone buzzes again, an email from Doris. "Come home, darling. We can fix this together. I understand better than anyone what you're going through." I bet she does. She's been through their manipulation machine, came out the other side so twisted she now helps operate it. But she made one crucial mistake. She helped target another mother. The back door opens, spilling light into the alley. I press myself against the cold brick wall, holding my breath. "Check the parking lot," Ryan's voice carries. "She has to be here somewhere." In my pocket, the USB drive contains enough evidence to destroy them all. But using it means going nuclear, means becoming the very thing they accused me of being. Ruthless, calculating, destructive. Then I think of Lily, of the future they had planned for her, of other daughters, other mothers, other lives waiting to be consumed by their machine. Sometimes the only way to stop a fire is to start a bigger one. I slip away into the darkness, already composing emails to every music industry contact I have. By morning, Harold's carefully constructed empire will be nothing but ashes, and from those ashes, I'll build something stronger, something honest, something they can never control. The industry newsletter hits like a bomb at dawn. Rising star's husband linked to music management scandal. My phone explodes with notifications as Ryan's biggest clients start jumping ship. One by one, they're all discovering the technical issues I carefully planted in their recordings. I rock Lily in the pre-dawn darkness of Mia's guest room, watching the chaos unfold on my laptop screen. 3 record labels have already launched internal investigations. Harold's name keeps coming up in increasingly uncomfortable contexts. My phone rings. Doris. I let it go to voicemail, but her text follows immediately. "You have no idea what you're destroying. Some things need to stay buried." A knock at the door makes me jump. It's Sam, looking like he hasn't slept in days. "They found me out," he says without preamble. "Harold's lawyers are coming for the studio. They know I helped you access the servers." My throat tightens. "I'll fix this. There's more." He hands me a manila envelope. One of Harold's previous victims reached out. She wants to talk, but she's terrified. Says she has proof of something bigger than industry manipulation. Inside the envelope is a single photograph. Harold and Ryan, 10 years ago, standing with a group of men I don't recognize. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, "Ask about Geneva." My phone buzzes again, an email from Ryan's lawyer. "Custody hearing moved up, tomorrow 9 a.m. "They're trying to box me in," I say, more to myself than Sam. "Force me to either back down or lose everything." "Maybe it's time to back off," Sam suggests quietly. "You've made your point." "Have I?" I show him the photograph. "This goes deeper than we thought. They're not just controlling careers. They're destroying lives." Lily stirs in her sleep, and I adjust her blanket. My daughter, who they wanted to mold into their next victim, who they'd groom just like they groomed me, just like Harold groomed Doris. Another text from Doris. "Meet me, alone. There are things you need to understand before it's too late." Sam reads the message over my shoulder. It's a trap, obviously, but something in her tone nags at me. The desperation feels real. My laptop pings. Another news alert. Ryan's biggest client has not only dropped him, but is filing suit over the compromised recordings. The client's statement mentions systematic manipulation and industry-wide corruption. "It's working," Sam says. "The whole house of cards is falling." But at what cost? I think of the custody hearing, of Sam's career hanging by a thread, of all the relationships burning in this fire I started. My phone rings again, an unknown number this time. When I answer, a woman's voice speaks quickly, quietly. "I'm the one who sent the photo. We need to meet. There's something you should see before you go any further. Who is this? Someone who tried to fight them 10 years ago and failed. Someone who knows what they do to women who don't play by their rules. The line goes dead. Moments later, an address appears via text. Sam reads it and pales. That's Harold's old office building, the one that burned down in 2013. The pieces start clicking together. The photograph, Geneva, the fire. Something happened there, something they buried along with all their other secrets. Watch Lily, I tell Sam, already reaching for my coat. Hazel, wait, think about this. If you go digging into their past is my future if I don't stop them. I kiss Lily's forehead, and her future too. My phone lights up with another message from Doris. Last chance, meet me, or tomorrow's hearing won't go the way you think. 2 meetings, 2 versions of the truth, 2 paths forward. One could save my daughter, the other could destroy everything I've built. Or both could be traps, designed to silence me, just like they've silenced others. The sun is rising now, painting Mia's spare room in shades of gold and shadow. In a few hours, I'll either have the proof I need to burn their whole empire down, or I'll lose everything I'm fighting for. If I'm not back by 8, I tell Sam, get Lily to my parents and release everything we have to every news outlet you can find. Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire, and I'm done being afraid of getting burned. The burned-out office building looms like a skeleton against the morning sky. I check my phone one last time. Still no word from Sam. The mysterious woman who called about Geneva should be here any minute. Instead, I find Doris waiting in the charred lobby. I knew you'd come here. She stands near a blackened reception desk, looking smaller somehow, more human. After all, this is where it started, where it always starts. Where what starts? The end. She pulls out a familiar-looking USB drive, identical to the one I have. Did you really think you were the first to try bringing us down? My stomach drops. How did you get this from Sam? Her laugh is hollow. Because he's been working for us from the beginning, dear. Just like everyone else in your life. The floor seems to shift beneath my feet. You're lying. Am I? She gestures around the burned space. Ask yourself who gave you access to those servers, who pointed you toward the evidence, who made sure you found exactly what you were looking for. My phone buzzes, a text from Sam. I'm sorry. The betrayal hits like a physical blow. All this time, I thought I was the one setting the traps. The custody hearing starts in an hour, Doris continues. But there won't be much to discuss once the judge sees evidence of your mental instability. Breaking into servers, sabotaging recordings, paranoid accusations. You orchestrated all of this. We gave you the matches. You chose to burn everything down. She steps closer, including your daughter's future. My phone lights up again, news alerts flooding in. My own face stares back at me from industry websites, alongside headlines about mental breakdowns and criminal investigations. It's already done, Doris says softly. The papers are being filed as we speak. Full custody to Ryan, with supervised visitation after you complete mandatory treatment. You can't. We already have, but there's still a way out. She holds up a contract. Sign over your rights to the music, admit to emotional instability, agree to treatment. We'll make sure you can still be part of Lily's life. Through the broken windows, I hear car doors slamming, footsteps on gravel. That's the police, Doris explains. Sam provided quite detailed evidence about your activities these past weeks. My hands shake as I pull up my messages to Mia. Get Lily out, now. The response is immediate. Already done. But Hazel, there's something you need to know about Ryan. The message cuts off as my phone dies. Perfect timing. It's over, Hazel. Doris's voice is almost gentle. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The footsteps are getting closer. Through the haze of panic, a detail finally clicks. Why this building? I ask. Why meet here? Something flickers across Doris's face. Fear? Because of Geneva? The word makes her flinch. What happened here, Doris? What really burned in that fire? Don't. Was she like me? Like the others? Did she fight back too hard? You don't understand what you're... Then help me understand. I step closer, even as the footsteps reach the door. Tell me what happened to Geneva. Tell me why you're really here. For a moment, I see something crack in Doris's carefully maintained facade. Then the doors burst open, flooding the space with uniformed officers. Miss Morris? One approaches with handcuffs. You're under arrest for cybercrimes and harassment. As they read my rights, I keep my eyes locked on Doris. She won't meet my gaze, but her hands clutch the contract like a lifeline. Wait, she says suddenly, her voice shaking. There's something... But Harold appears in the doorway, silencing her with a look. The mask slips back into place as she turns away. They lead me out into the harsh morning light, past news cameras that appeared from nowhere, past Ryan standing with his lawyers, past the life I thought I was reclaiming. But I saw it, that moment of doubt in Doris's eyes, that crack in the foundation. As they put me in the police car, I think of Lily, safe with Mia, of the unfinished text about Ryan, of Geneva, whoever she was, and the truth that burned with this building. They think they've won. They think they've broken me. But sometimes you have to lose everything to see what's really worth fighting for. And I'm just getting started. The holding cell door opens with a metallic screech. I expect more officers, maybe lawyers. Instead, Mia stands there, holding a manila envelope. You have 5 minutes, the guard says. Mia waits until we're alone. Geneva was Doris's daughter. The words hit like a thunderbolt. What? Her first daughter, from before Harold. She slides the envelope through the visiting window. I found her death certificate. The fire wasn't an accident. My hands shake as I read the documents. Geneva Morris, 19 years old, aspiring singer, dead in a suspicious fire at her father's recording studio, the same building where Doris had me arrested. There's more, Mia says. Ryan knew. He's been blackmailing Harold with this for years. A knock signals our time is almost up. Mia leans closer to the glass. Doris is willing to testify against all of them. She's been keeping records. Why now? Because of Lily, because history's repeating itself. She glances at the guard returning. The hearing's been delayed. Technical issues with the evidence against you. I understand immediately. Sam's carefully constructed paper trail is falling apart. One more thing, Mia whispers. Ryan's at the old studio, destroying evidence, right now. The guard approaches. Time's up. Wait, I call to Mia. How did you get me out? She smiles grimly. I didn't. She did. The guard removes her cap, revealing Doris's face. We have exactly 17 minutes before they realize I'm not Officer Chen. The hallway blurs as we run. Alarms start blaring. Someone's noticed something's wrong. In the parking lot, Mia's car idles with the door open. Harold will be at the country club, Doris says as we drive. He always hides there during a crisis. But Ryan is trying to bury Geneva again, I finish, along with everything else. The burned-out building appears ahead. Ryan's car parked haphazardly outside. Smoke drifts from a second-floor window. He's burning it all, Doris whispers, just like before. I'm out of the car before it fully stops. Inside, the acrid smell of burning paper fills the air. Footsteps echo above. Ryan! My voice bounces off charred walls. The footsteps stop. Then, should have taken the deal, Hazel. I climb the scorched stairs, following his voice. Like Geneva did? Silence. Then a bitter laugh. Doris told you. You knew. All this time you knew what happened here. I knew an opportunity when I saw one. His voice comes from behind a partially burned door. Harold's guilt was very profitable. I pushed the door open. Ryan stands by a metal trash can, flames consuming documents inside. The Geneva photo sits on top, edges curling in the heat. It was never about the music, was it? I ask. Or me? Or even Lily? It was about winning. He drops another handful of papers into the fire. Something you never understood. Neither did Geneva. His face twists. Don't say her name. Why? Because she fought back? Because she wouldn't let Harold control her career like he controlled Doris? Because she was weak. He hurls the words like weapons. Just like you're weak. Just like your mother? Doris's voice makes him freeze. She stands in the doorway, phone recording everything. Tell me more about my weakness, Ryan. Tell me how you used my dead daughter to blackmail your way up the industry. His mask finally cracks. Mom, I'm not your mother. Her voice could freeze fire. I'm just another woman you tried to break. Police sirens wail in the distance. Real ones this time. It's over, I say quietly. The evidence, the blackmail, all of it. We're done being your puppets. Ryan lunges for the burning can, but I'm faster. The files scatter across the floor, some burning, some intact. Among them, a familiar contract catches my eye, dated 20 years ago, signed by Geneva Morris. She wouldn't sign it either, Doris says softly. That's why why I let them. The sirens are closer now. Ryan looks between us, between the burning evidence and the open window, calculating his odds. Don't, I warn, but he's already moving. He makes it 2 steps before Doris's taser drops him. As he convulses on the floor, she looks at me with tears in her eyes. Take care of Lily. Don't let her inherit our chains. The police burst in, for real this time. As they read Ryan his rights, I watched Doris retrieve the photo of Geneva from the flames. Some fires cleanse, some destroy, and some, if you're brave enough to walk through them, show you the way home. The spotlight feels different tonight, warmer somehow, like sunlight instead of scrutiny. The Blue Note is packed, but I only see Lily in the front row, her tiny hands clapping along with the rhythm section. My fingers trace the microphone stand, the same one I gripped that night when everything started to unravel. But this time, I'm not searching the crowd for approval or permission. This next song, I say into the mic, is called Geneva's Echo. In the corner booth, Doris stiffens. She's been coming to every performance since the trial, sitting in the shadows like a guardian angel with too many regrets. Our eyes meet briefly before she looks away, dabbing at tears she pretends aren't falling. The melody starts soft, building like a storm. It's the song I found in Geneva's old notebooks, hidden in the ashes of that burned-out building. Her last composition, never performed, until now. The newspaper headlines flash through my mind as I sing. Industry mogul Harold Morris sentenced. Ryan Morris pleads guilty to conspiracy. Systematic abuse in music industry exposed. But those aren't the real victory. The real victory is in the stack of letters on my dressing room table, from other women, other survivors, sharing their stories, starting their own bands, recording their own albums, breaking free. The song reaches its crescendo, and I catch a glimpse of Sam being escorted out by security. He still tries to come sometimes, claiming he wants to apologize. But some betrayals don't get second chances. Mia's fingers dance across the piano keys, weaving harmony through Geneva's melody. She's more than my accompanist now. She's my partner in the new record label we started. No more predatory contracts, no more stolen dreams. The final note hangs in the air like a question. In the silence that follows, Lily runs up to the stage, her curls bouncing with each step. I lift her onto my hip, feeling her heartbeat against mine. Again, Mama, she demands into the microphone, making the audience laugh. One more song, I promise, but not Geneva's. That one belongs to history now, preserved but not repeated. As I start the next number, I notice Doris slipping out the back door. On her table, she's left an envelope, another piece of Geneva's story, another shard of truth to add to the mosaic we're building. The industry papers call it a revolution. They say we're changing the game, creating spaces where artists can thrive without selling their souls. But they're missing the point. This was never about changing the industry. It was about breaking cycles, about making sure no other mother has to choose between her art and her child. No other daughter has to burn for someone else's ambition. After the show, I find a new letter in my dressing room, not from another survivor this time, but from Ryan. His fourth attempt at contact since the sentencing. Like the others, it goes straight into the shredder. Some people say forgiveness sets you free, but sometimes it's the permission to never forgive that really liberates you. Lily falls asleep on the drive home, clutching her toy microphone. In the rearview mirror, I catch a glimpse of a familiar car, Harold's old Mercedes, now driven by one of his victims as a trophy of justice. At home, I tuck Lily into bed beneath the dream catcher Geneva's mother sent us. A family heirloom passing to a new generation of unbound women. My phone buzzes with a text from Doris. She would have been proud of all of it. I don't respond. Some bridges stay burned even after the smoke clears. But as I pass the hall mirror, I notice something different in my reflection. Not just strength or survival, but something rarer. Peace, not the kind that comes from forgiveness or forgetting, but the kind that grows in the ashes of necessary fires. Tomorrow, there'll be more songs to write, more battles to fight, more chains to break. The industry isn't fixed. It's just been put on notice. But tonight, in the quiet of my daughter's room, watching her dream without fear, I understand what Geneva knew all along. The most powerful note isn't the one you sing. It's the one you refuse to let anyone silence.
The sound of furniture scraping across hardwood floors stopped me dead in my tracks. My house key hung suspended between my fingers as unfamiliar voices drifted through the front door. Someone was inside my home, my sanctuary, my inheritance, my last connection to my parents. I'm Angela, and until this moment, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. The door creaked open to reveal stacks of cardboard boxes cluttering my normally pristine entryway. The scent of someone else's cooking, heavy with garlic and oregano, had already invaded the space where my mother's signature lavender potpourri used to reign. "Oh, Angela, you're home early," my husband Mark's cheerful voice carried from the kitchen, as if this was just another Tuesday evening. "Come help us get Mom and Dad settled in." My stomach dropped. Mom and Dad, his parents, Linda and Frank. Settled in. The words came out, barely above a whisper. Linda emerged from my kitchen, my mother's kitchen, wearing an apron I'd never seen before, already looking far too comfortable. "Mark didn't tell you. Our lease wasn't renewed, and we needed somewhere to stay while we figure things out." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. "No," I managed. "He didn't mention anything." Frank appeared behind her, carrying what looked like their wedding photo. "Just temporary, of course," he said, though he was already eyeing the perfect spot above my fireplace, the same spot where my parents' wedding photo had hung for 30 years. I turned to Mark, who was suddenly very interested in unpacking a box labeled kitchen. "Can we talk?" "Privately." He followed me to the back porch, where I used to spend summers watching Mom tend her roses. The bushes were wild now, untamed since her passing 2 years ago. "They lost their apartment," Mark said, before I could speak. "The building's being converted to condos. They had nowhere else to go." "And you didn't think to discuss this with me first?" "They're my parents, Angela. What was I supposed to do? Consult your wife? Give me some warning? Anything besides ambushing me with new house guests?" "It's not an ambush. They need help." Linda's voice carried through the window. "Mark, honey, where should I put my good china? These cabinets are so cluttered." My hands clenched into fists. "That's my mother's china. We can make room," Mark said quickly. "It's just temporary. remember, but I saw it in his eyes. The same look he got whenever his parents needed something. That mixture of guilt and obligation that always ended with him choosing them over me. How temporary? I asked. Just until they get back on their feet. A few months, maybe? A few months. The words echoed in my head as I watched Linda rearranging my kitchen through the window. Frank was already settled in my father's old armchair, remote in hand like he owned the place. I teach online classes from home, I reminded him. I need quiet, space, routine. They'll respect that, Mark interrupted. But we both knew it was a lie. I felt it then, that first crack in the foundation of everything I'd built. This house was my anchor, my inheritance, the last piece of my parents I had left. And now it was being invaded, piece by piece, memory by memory. I need some air, I said, already heading for the gate. Angela, wait. But I was already walking, my phone in hand, texting my sister Sophie. They're here. Mark let them move in, without asking. Her response was immediate. What the actual hell? What indeed? As I walked, Linda's calculating smile played on repeat in my mind. This wasn't just about needing a place to stay. I knew that look. She had plans. And somehow, I'd become an obstacle in my own home. The sun was setting behind the houses, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. Somewhere in the distance, a door slammed. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again with Sophie's message. Want me to come over? I typed back, not yet, I need to think. And think I did. About every subtle dig, every backhanded compliment, every time Linda and Frank had tried to undermine my place in Mark's life. Now they were in my house, touching my things, erasing my parents' memory piece by piece. This wasn't just an invasion. It was a declaration of war. 3 days into the invasion, and my office door swung open without a knock. Linda stood there, vacuum cleaner humming in her hands, while I sat frozen mid-sentence during my online design workshop. Sorry, dear, she said, not sounding sorry at all. Just tidying up a bit, don't mind me. 20 students watched through their webcams as I muted my microphone. I'm teaching right now. Oh, this won't take but a minute. The vacuum roared to life, drowning out any possibility of continuing my class. I typed a quick message to my students. Technical difficulties, taking a 5-minute break. Then I ended the recording and stood up. Linda, I explained yesterday that I teach from 9 to 11. These are paid sessions. She switched off the vacuum. Her lips pursed. Well, how was I supposed to remember that? Besides, this house needs a proper cleaning schedule. When was the last time anyone vacuumed under your desk? My mother's voice echoed in my head. Pick your battles wisely, Angela. But Mom never had to deal with Linda. I'll clean my office myself, after class. Nonsense. You're so busy with your little computer job. Let me help. She reached for my desk, shifting papers I'd carefully arranged for today's presentation. My phone buzzed. A message from Tom. Lunch today? Got that marketing proposal you asked about. Actually, I said to Linda, I have a business lunch. I'll be leaving right after class. Her eyebrows shot up. Business lunch? But I'm making my special meatloaf, Mark's favorite. She emphasized his name like a weapon. Another time. I sat back down, making it clear the conversation was over. She lingered in the doorway, vacuum silent but still present, like a threat. I suppose some people prioritize work over family, she said finally, shuffling away. I waited until her footsteps faded before reopening my class session. My hands shook as I tried to continue teaching, but the damage was done. The rest of the class felt forced, my usual enthusiasm replaced by a tight knot in my stomach. Later, at the small cafe downtown, Tom listened as I recounted the morning's events. She's marking her territory, he said, sliding a folder across the table, like a dog peeing on a fire hydrant. Thanks for that mental image. I flipped through the proposal he'd drafted for my freelance business. You really think I could make it work, going completely independent? Your current teaching platform takes 40% of your earnings. Go solo, build your own brand, and he stopped mid-sentence, staring past me. Incoming. I turned to see Mark and Frank entering the cafe. My husband's face darkened when he spotted me. Angela, Mom said you were in a business meeting. I am. I gestured to Tom and the paperwork between us. Tom's helping me explore some options for expanding my teaching business. Frank's quiet voice carried unexpected weight. Sounds expensive. In this economy, stability is key. Actually, Tom interjected, Angela's current success rate suggests, I'm sure you mean well, Frank cut in, but family should handle family matters. The way he said family made it clear I barely qualified. Mark shifted uncomfortably. We should let them get back to their meeting, Dad. We're just grabbing lunch. Of course. Frank's smile didn't reach his eyes. Though I'm sure your mother would have loved to see you for lunch, Angela. She went to all that trouble with the meatloaf. They moved to a table across the restaurant, but the damage was done. I could feel Mark's periodic glances, like pinpricks on my skin. Well, Tom said quietly. That was subtle as a sledgehammer. I stared at the proposal in front of me. They've been there 3 days, Tom. 3 days, and I'm already losing my mind. Then maybe it's time to start playing their game. He tapped the folder. Financial independence is a powerful thing. My phone lit up with a text from Sophie. Coming over tonight. No excuses. We need to talk. I looked back at Mark, now deep in conversation with his father. 3 days ago, I had a home, a husband who I thought supported me, and a clear vision of my future. Now everything felt like quicksand, pulling me under while Linda and Frank watched from solid ground. Okay, I told Tom, turning back to the proposal. Show me how to make this work, because one thing was becoming crystal clear. In this war, I needed my own ammunition. The bills were spread across my desk like evidence at a crime scene. 2 weeks of Linda and Frank's residence had doubled our utilities, yet somehow I was the only one concerned about the mounting expenses. I heard their voices drift up from the kitchen, thinking they were alone in the house. I'd told them I had a morning workshop, but canceled it after losing 3 students last week due to Linda's cleaning interruptions. The property values in this neighborhood have skyrocketed, Frank said. If we sold now, I froze, pen hovering over my budget calculations. Mark would never agree, Linda replied. He's too attached to what Angela wants. Mark will see reason. The boys always understood the importance of family security. Their voices dropped lower, and I crept to the stairs, my heart thundering in my chest. Retirement fund won't last forever, Frank was saying. This house is our best option. We just need to help them see it's for the best. Linda's tone carried that false sweetness I'd grown to hate. Angela's business isn't stable enough to maintain a property like this anyway. My phone buzzed, Sophie asking if we were still on for dinner. I typed back, come now, please. I waited until I heard them move to the back patio before descending the stairs. The kitchen counter held papers they'd left behind. Bank statements, property assessments, real estate listings. My hands shook as I snapped photos with my phone. The front door opened, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Mark walked in, home early from work. Hey, he said, frowning at my expression. Everything okay? Before I could answer, Linda bustled in from the patio. Mark, perfect timing. Your father and I were just discussing some family matters. Financial matters, I corrected, holding up their papers. Care to explain why you're researching property values for my house? The silence that followed felt like a noose tightening. Now, Angela, Frank began, entering behind Linda. This affects all of us. All of us? My voice cracked. This is my inheritance, my parents' home, which requires significant maintenance, Linda cut in. The roof needs work, the plumbing's outdated. Stop, I turned to Mark. Did you know about this? He wouldn't meet my eyes. They mentioned looking into options. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Sophie's arrival saved me from completely falling apart. What's going on? She asked, reading the room's tension. Show her, I told Mark, shoving the papers at him. Show her how your parents want to sell my home, out from under me. That's not, Linda started, But Sophie cut her off. Are you kidding me? My sister's nursing scrubs still carried hospital antiseptic, but her rage was pure fire. 2 weeks? You've been here 2 weeks, and you're already plotting? We're thinking of everyone's future, Frank insisted. Everyone's future? I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. You mean your future, your retirement, your security. Angela, Mark reached for me, but I stepped back. Just don't. I gathered the papers, hands steadier than I expected. I need some air. Sophie followed me onto the front porch, where I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. I have proof now, I whispered, showing her the photos on my phone. They're not just trying to take over my home. They want to take it away completely. We should call Tham, Sophie said. He'll know what legal options. The door opened behind us. Mark stepped out, looking lost. Can we talk about this? Like you talked to me about your parents moving in, I asked. Or about them planning to sell my house. They're just exploring options, he repeated weakly. Options. The word tasted bitter. Here's an option. They can leave. Angela, no. Something inside me hardened, like concrete setting. I'm done being the understanding wife. This is my home, Mark, mine, and I will not let them take it from me. Sophie's hand found mine, squeezing tight. Inside, I could hear Linda's voice rising, probably spinning this into another example of my instability. But for the first time since they arrived, I felt steady, clear, the path ahead crystallizing with terrible certainty. You should go back inside, I told Mark. Your parents need you. He hesitated, then turned away. The door closed behind him, with a finality that echoed in my bones. What are you going to do? Sophie asked quietly. I stared at my childhood home, at the windows where my mother once hung curtains that Linda had replaced. At the garden my father had tended, now being reorganized by Frank. Whatever it takes, I answered. Whatever it takes to make them pay. My laptop screen flickered with another cancellation email. 4th student this week. The reviews mentioned unprofessional environment and constant interruptions. 3 months of Linda and Frank's presence had systematically dismantled everything I'd built. A knock at my office door made me flinch. Not Linda this time. Mark stood there, holding papers. The mortgage payment bounced, he said quietly. I stared at him. That's impossible. Mom and Dad offered to help. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They suggested refinancing. The pieces clicked together with nauseating clarity. The mysterious bills, the rising expenses, Linda's smug smile every time she mentioned family contributions. They're bleeding us dry on purpose, I whispered. Don't be paranoid. But his voice lacked conviction. They're trying to help. A text from Tom lit up my phone. Meeting canceled. Investor backed out after background check. My hands started shaking. Linda had mentioned knowing someone at the investment firm. Just another coincidence. I need to see the bank statements, I said. Mom's already handling it. Our bank statements, Mark, now. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone. They're not letting me access the joint account anymore. Said it was for security after some suspicious activity. The room spun slightly. What suspicious activity? Large transfers to an unknown account. He finally looked at me. They think you're hiding money. A laugh bubbled up, bitter and sharp. They think Do you hear yourself? Footsteps in the hallway announced Linda's arrival. She carried a tray of tea, playing the concerned mother-in-law to perfection. I just heard about your business troubles, dear. Her sympathy dripped like poison honey. Such a shame. But perhaps it's a sign to consider more stable options, like selling my home, like giving them everything they wanted. I need some air, I managed, grabbing my keys. In this state? Linda's voice carried down the hallway. Mark, you can't let her drive when she's so unstable. But I was already out the door, calling Sophie. She answered on the first ring. I was just about to call you. Someone's been asking questions at the hospital about your mental health history. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. What? HR got a concerned call about my troubled sister. potentially affecting my job performance. She paused. The caller mentioned your recent erratic behavior and financial irregularities. I pulled into Tom's office parking lot, my vision blurring. He was waiting outside. They're destroying everything, I said as he approached. My business, my reputation. Your credit score too, he added grimly. I did some digging. Someone's been making inquiries, raising red flags, the kind that make investors nervous. They want me desperate. The realization felt like ice in my veins. Desperate enough to sell. Tom's expression hardened. There's more. I found something in the property records. Your parents' mortgage had a clause about maintaining family ownership. If you sell, the proceeds go to a trust, I finished. For future generations. Mom made sure of it, which they'd know if they'd seen the full documents. He met my eyes. Angela, they're not just trying to force you out. They're trying to make you look incompetent enough for Mark to take control of the estate. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Come home. We need to talk about power of attorney. Something inside me shifted, like a key turning in a lock. I thought of Linda's careful manipulations, Frank's quiet pressure, Mark's willing blindness, 3 months of subtle degradation, of carefully orchestrated destruction. I need a lawyer, I said. Tom nodded. Already called one. But Angela, they're not going to stop. This kind of calculated attack. I know. I looked at my childhood home in the distance, where Linda and Frank were probably already planning their next move. That's why I'm going to beat them at their own game. How? I thought of every dismissive comment, every orchestrated failure, every piece of my life they'd systematically undermined. By letting them think they've won, I said, right before I take everything from them. My phone buzzed again. Sophie sending screenshots of the hospital inquiry. The caller's name made my blood run cold. Linda's sister, a psychiatric nurse with access to medical records. The game had changed. They weren't just trying to take my home anymore. They were trying to erase me completely. The neighborhood block party buzzed with conversation and laughter, but I could feel Linda's performance before I saw it. A cluster of my longtime neighbors gathered around her, their expressions shifting from concern to pity as they glanced my way. Of course we're worried, Linda's voice carried across the lawn. The erratic behavior, the financial troubles. Sometimes love means making hard decisions for family. My fingers tightened around my glass. Sophie appeared at my elbow, her face tight with anger. She's telling everyone you're having a mental breakdown, she whispered. That Mark might need to take over the estate for your own good. The glass nearly slipped from my hand as Frank approached our small group, playing his part perfectly. Angela, perhaps you should sit down. You're looking rather unstable. I'm fine. The words came out sharp enough to draw attention. See what I mean? Linda's stage whisper to our neighbor Jane carried clearly. We're just trying to protect her from herself. Mark stood between his parents and me, saying nothing. Always saying nothing. Actually, I said, my voice stronger than I felt, I'd love to hear more about these concerns, Linda. Please, share them with everyone. The party chatter died down. Linda's smile flickered, but held. This isn't the place, dear. We're just trying to help. Like you helped access our bank accounts? The words fell like stones into the sudden quiet. Or how you helped contact my students' parents about my unstable behavior. Angela, Mark stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Don't do this here. I jerked away from him. Why not here? Isn't this exactly where Linda wants to have this conversation? In front of everyone. You're proving their point, he hissed. Just calm down. Calm down. I laughed, and the sound scared even me. While they destroy everything I've built, while they try to steal my home, nobody's stealing anything. Frank's authoritative voice boomed. We're protecting family assets. My family's assets, I corrected. My parents' home, my inheritance. Linda touched her chest, the perfect picture of maternal concern. You see? These paranoid accusations. Mark, honey, perhaps it's time to discuss that power of attorney. The glass shattered in my hand. I barely felt the sting of broken crystal or the warm trickle of blood. Angela, Sophie moved toward me, but Linda was faster. "Oh dear God," she gasped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's hurting herself. Mark, do something." "I'm calling an ambulance," Frank announced, phone already in hand. "Don't you dare." My voice sounded strange in my ears, distant and cold. "Don't you fucking dare. This is exactly what we were afraid of," Linda said to the horrified onlookers. "The mood swings, the aggression. We've tried to handle this privately, but handle this." I stepped toward her, watching her theatrical flinch with detached fascination. "Like you handled my business contacts, my bank accounts, my reputation." "Angela, please," Mark begged. "You're embarrassing yourself." Something snapped inside me. "I'm embarrassing myself while your mother orchestrates my public breakdown, while your father tries to seize control of my home. They're trying to help." "Help?" I turned to the gathered crowd. "Ask them about the trust clause in my parents' will. Ask them why they're so desperate to force a sale they can't profit from. Ask them." "That's enough." Frank's command cracked like a whip. "Mark, get her inside before she hurts herself again." Mark reached for me, but Sophie stepped between us. "Touch her, and I call the police." The tension crackled like lightning before a storm. I looked at Mark, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. "Choose," I said quietly. "Right here, right now. Choose." He looked at his parents, then back at me. "You need help, Angela. Professional help." The last thread of hope snapped clean. "Okay then." I pulled my wedding ring off, letting it fall into the grass. "I choose too." I walked away from the party, from the whispers and stares, from the ruins of my marriage. Behind me, I heard Linda's performance reach its crescendo. The concerned mother-in-law watching her unstable daughter-in-law's public meltdown. But as I reached my car, I smiled, because Linda had finally overplayed her hand, and now I knew exactly how to destroy her. The restraining order arrived 3 days after the block party. I stared at the legal document, my hands trembling as I read the allegations. Erratic behavior, threats of violence, emotional instability, all carefully documented by Linda, supported by witness statements from concerned neighbors. I wasn't allowed within 100 feet of my own home. "They can't do this," Sophie said, pacing my temporary room in Tom's guest house. "It's your house." "They already did." I watched through the window as rain pelted the glass. Linda's sister provided medical opinions about my deteriorating mental state. Frank's golf buddy judge signed the order. My phone buzzed. Another email from my remaining students' parents, withdrawing from my program. Linda's whisper campaign had worked perfectly. "The lawyer says we can fight it," Tom said from the doorway. "But it'll take time. Money. Money I no longer had access to, thanks to the emergency financial controls Mark had been granted. For my own protection, of course." "Angela?" Sophie's voice sounded distant. "What are you thinking?" I touched the window, tracing raindrops with my finger. "I'm thinking about Mom, how hard she fought to keep the house and the family, how I promised her." The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. Tom checked his security camera and swore softly. "It's Mark." My chest tightened. "I can't." "You don't have to." Sophie moved toward the door, but I caught her arm. "No, let him in. I need to hear what he has to say." Mark looked smaller somehow, standing in Tom's living room. The confident husband I'd known, replaced by this uncertain stranger. "They're worried about you," he started. "Worried enough to steal my home, my business, my life." He flinched. "Nobody's stealing anything." "But after your behavior at the party." "My behavior?" The laugh that escaped me didn't sound entirely sane. Maybe Linda was right about me after all. "Tell me, Mark, how should I have behaved while your mother systematically destroyed everything I care about?" "She's trying to help." "Help?" I stepped closer, watching him back away. "By having her sister fabricate mental health concerns, by turning my neighbors against me, by freezing my accounts. You're not thinking clearly." I've never thought more clearly in my life. I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos I'd gathered, your parents' financial records, the calls they made to my students' parents, the conversations with real estate agents, every step of their plan to force me out. His face paled. Where did you get those? Does it matter? What matters is what I'm going to do with them. Angela, please. He reached for me, but I stepped back. They're my parents. They're not perfect, but they're family, I finished. And I'm not really, never was. That's not fair. Fair? My voice cracked. Was it fair when your mother convinced everyone I was having a mental breakdown? When your father used his connections to freeze my accounts? When you stood there and let them destroy me? Silence stretched between us like a chasm. What do you want? He finally asked. I want my home back. I want my life back. I want... My voice caught. I want the husband who promised to stand by me, not the coward who helped his parents tear me apart. They're filing for divorce, he said quietly. Dad's already drawn up the papers, given your current state. My current state, I nodded slowly. The one they carefully orchestrated. Tell me, Mark, did you know about their plan from the beginning? Or did they convince you along the way that destroying me was for my own good? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Get out, Angela. Get out before I give them real proof of my instability. After he left, I sat in the growing darkness, listening to the rain. Sophie and Tom kept their distance, understanding I needed this moment. My phone lit up with a text from Linda. We're only trying to help you heal. When you're ready to accept that help. I deleted it without finishing. Then I opened my laptop and began typing. If they wanted to paint me as unstable, fine. If they wanted to take everything from me, let them try. But they'd forgotten something crucial about cornered animals. They fight back. Tom, I called out. Remember that dirt you found on Frank's business dealings? Time to use it. The rain kept falling, but I barely noticed anymore. I was too busy planning their destruction. The anonymous email to Frank's business partners took 3 weeks to achieve its intended effect. I watched from across the street as police cars surrounded my home, their lights painting the evening in red and blue. Linda stood on the porch, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. Frank sat in the back of a police car, his face ashen. Mark paced between them, running his hands through his hair. You sure about this? Sophie asked beside me. I touched the manila envelope in my hands. They wanted to paint me as unstable. Fine. Let's see how they handle their own carefully constructed world falling apart. The detective I'd contacted earlier spotted me and nodded. Time to move. Walking up my own driveway felt like crossing a battlefield. Linda saw me first, her eyes widening with recognition, then narrowing with fury. You, she hissed. You did this. Did what, Linda? Expose Frank's creative accounting, or his deals with those shell companies? Mark stepped between us. Angela, don't what? Tell the truth? I held up the envelope. Like the truth about how you and your parents orchestrated my breakdown, documented everything so carefully. Linda's face paled. Those records are private. Like my medical records? The ones your sister accessed illegally. I turned to the detective. I believe that's relevant to your investigation, Detective Chen. You're destroying this family, Mark said. No. My voice stayed steady, though my hand shook. Your parents destroyed it. You helped them. We were trying to protect you. Stop lying. The words exploded from me. You wanted my house, my inheritance. You couldn't stand that I had something you couldn't control. Linda's composure cracked. We deserved security. After everything we've done for this family. This was never your family's home. I cut in. It was mine, my parents' legacy. Your parents, Linda laughed, high and brittle. Your father was a fool who... The slap echoed across the lawn. Linda's hand flew to her cheek, shock replacing anger. Angela, Mark moved toward me, but Sophie stepped between us. Touch her, she warned, and I'll add assault to the charges. Detective Chen approached, his notepad ready. Mrs. Harrison, about those medical records. Linda's facade crumbled completely. You don't understand, she pleaded. We were going to lose everything. Our savings, our status. Frank promised he could fix it if we just had some capital. The house, was never yours to take. I opened the envelope, spreading documents across the hood of the police car. Every step of your plan, every call, every manipulation, every lie, documented as carefully as you documented my instability. Frank's voice carried from the police car. Linda, don't say another word. But she was beyond hearing him. We gave you everything. A husband, a family, support. You gave me nothing, I corrected quietly. You always took. And now, I gestured to the police cars, the gathering neighbors, her crumbling world. Now you lose everything. Please, Mark tried one last time. We can fix this. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and felt nothing but pity. No, Mark, we can't. But you know what? I don't want to anymore. Detective Chen finished his notes. We'll need statements from everyone. I handed him the envelope. Everything you need is here. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence showing how they orchestrated my mental breakdown to seize control of my inheritance. Linda lunged for the envelope, but an officer caught her arm. As they led her toward another police car, she turned back to me, her face twisted with something between hatred and fear. You'll regret this, she spat. You'll end up alone, just like you, I finished. No, Linda, I won't. Because unlike you, I know the difference between having things and having people who truly care. I watched them drive away, Frank in one car, Linda in another, Mark standing lost in the driveway of a home that was never his. Sophie squeezed my hand. You okay? I looked up at my house, my parents' house, standing quiet and strong against the evening sky. No, I admitted, but I will be. The police lights faded into the distance, taking with them the family that had tried to destroy me. I climbed my porch steps alone, finally ready to reclaim my home. And this time, no one would take it from me. The divorce papers lay signed on my lawyer's desk, but it was the other document that held my attention. Frank's handwritten confession, detailing every manipulation, every scheme, every calculated move to destroy me. The DA's offering a deal, my lawyer said. In exchange for Frank's testimony about the financial fraud, they'll recommend minimal sentences. Through the office window, I watched Linda pace the hallway, her designer clothes replaced by something simpler, her makeup unable to hide her exhaustion. Angela, Sophie touched my arm. You don't have to decide right now. But I did. Because Linda had asked to speak with me one last time, and I needed to know what victory really meant. I found her by the window, staring at nothing. She spoke without turning. I used to watch my mother lose everything, she said quietly. Her home, her dignity, her children's respect. I swore I'd never be her. So you became something worse, she flinched. We thought we were protecting our future, Mark's future, by destroying mine, by controlling what we could. Finally, she turned. Do you know what it's like, feeling irrelevant, watching your whole world slip away? I thought of those first weeks after they moved in, how they'd systematically dismantled my life piece by piece. Yes, I answered, I do. Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Mark's staying with his cousin, she said finally. He wanted to apologize, but he's still choosing his family. Aren't you? Her gesture encompassed the legal papers, the confession, the wreckage of her life. Choosing your family's legacy over mercy. The word hit like a slap. Mercy. After what you did. We were wrong, she whispered. And for the first time, I heard real regret. So wrong. But destroying us won't bring back what you lost. No. I pulled out my phone, showing her the email I'd drafted to the DA. But this might bring something else. She read it slowly, her hands shaking. You'd advocate for leniency. Why? Because my mother taught me the difference between justice and vengeance. I took back the phone. And because I refuse to let your actions define who I become. The door opened. Frank stood there, looking older than I'd ever seen him. The house, he said roughly. We never told you why we really wanted it. Frank, don't, Linda started, but he continued. It reminded me of my childhood home, the one I lost when my father's business failed. I thought having it would fix everything broken inside me. He met my eyes. I was wrong. I thought of my own broken pieces, of how close I'd come to letting revenge reshape me into something unrecognizable. The DA's office will have my recommendation within the hour, I said. What happens after that is up to you. Linda stepped toward me, hand outstretched, but dropped it when I didn't move. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me. I gathered my papers. Just remember this moment the next time you try to take something that isn't yours. Outside, Sophie waited with Tom. You okay? I looked back at the building, where my almost in-laws faced the consequences of their choices, where my almost husband would soon learn of my decision. I kept waiting to feel satisfied, I admitted, to enjoy their downfall. But all I feel is free, Tom finished. And he was right. The weight of revenge had lifted, replaced by something lighter. Not forgiveness, never that, but perhaps understanding. That evening I sat in my mother's garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors she would have loved. The house stood quiet behind me, no longer haunted by Linda's presence or Frank's schemes. My phone buzzed with a message from Mark. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't respond. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. Sophie brought out tea in Mom's old cups, the ones Linda had tried to replace. So what now? She asked. I touched the familiar brick of my home, feeling its strength, its history, its future. Now, I said, I rebuild. But this time, I choose who gets to be part of the foundation. The garden needed work. The roses had withered under Linda's care. But as I watched the last light fade, I knew they'd bloom again, different perhaps, changed by the shadow of what had happened here, but stronger for having survived the storm.
The smell of garlic and herbs filled the kitchen as I wiped sweat from my brow, orchestrating the chaos of a Friday night dinner service. Pots clanged, flames roared, and servers darted in and out with steaming plates of my signature dishes. This was my element, the heart of Lorenzo's, the Italian restaurant I'd built from a rundown diner into the talk of the neighborhood. Jacqueline! My mother-in-law Margaret's shrill voice cut through the kitchen's symphony. The marinara is too spicy again. I just had table 6 complain. I bit my tongue, maintaining my focus on plating the seafood risotto. The recipe hasn't changed in 5 years, Margaret. It's the same sauce that won us the city's Best Italian award last month. Well, maybe we should go back to my recipe, she huffed, hovering over my shoulder. The old customers preferred it. The old customers, right. All 12 of them who used to come to the failing restaurant before I convinced Terry to let me revamp the menu. Before I spent countless nights perfecting recipes and building relationships with local suppliers. Before I transformed this place into something special. Order up, I called out, ignoring her commentary. Table 8, 2 risottos, 1 chicken marsala. You're behind on table 12. Terry appeared through the kitchen doors, his presence adding to the tension. My husband of 15 years looked more like a businessman these days than the charming chef I'd fallen in love with in culinary school. And Mother's right about the marinara. I closed my eyes for a moment, counting to 3. I've got it under control, Terry. Why don't you handle the front of house? Someone has to, he muttered, exchanging knowing looks with his mother. The night continued its familiar dance. Me cooking, them criticizing. By closing time, my feet ached and my chef's coat was stained with the day's efforts, but satisfaction warmed my chest as I counted the night's receipts. Another record-breaking Friday. We need to talk about the books, Terry said, appearing in the office doorway. His mother lingered behind him like a shadow. The numbers are great, I smiled, holding up the stack of receipts. We're up 20% from last month. That's not what I mean, Terry sighed, loosening his tie. Mother and I have been discussing the future of Lorenzo's. Margaret stepped forward, her perfectly manicured hands clasped together. The restaurant business is changing, dear. We need to think bigger. Bigger? I set down the receipts. We're doing better than ever. The food critic from the Herald is coming next week and... This isn't about your cooking, Terry interrupted. It's about business decisions, real business decisions. The way he emphasized real made my stomach clench. I handle the business decisions too, Terry. Or did you forget who negotiated our produce contracts? Who developed our catering program? That's all kitchen stuff. Margaret waved her hand dismissively. We're talking about the big picture. I think I'll stay late and finish the inventory, I said, turning back to my paperwork. I couldn't handle another lecture about my place in the restaurant. They left, but their words lingered like smoke in the air. I worked until nearly midnight, finding comfort in the routine of counting and organizing. As I prepared to leave, voices drifted from the dining room. Terry and Margaret were still here? I moved closer to the partially open door, their hushed conversation becoming clearer. The buyers want to close quickly, Terry was saying. They're offering more than we expected. My heart stopped. Good, Margaret replied. The sooner we get rid of this place, the better. We can use the money to open that sports bar franchise you've been eyeing. What about Jacqueline? Oh, Terry. Margaret's laugh was soft but cruel. She's a good cook, I'll give her that. But her place is in the kitchen, not in business meetings. She'll understand eventually. I pressed my hand against my mouth, stifling a gasp. The room spun as pieces clicked into place. The mysterious meetings, the whispered phone calls, Terry's sudden interest in the financial paperwork. They were selling my restaurant, my dream, my life's work, and they hadn't even bothered to tell me. I slid down the wall, my legs unable to hold me up anymore. The cold tile against my back was the only thing that felt real. Through the crack in the door, I could see them toasting with the expensive wine I'd selected for our anniversary celebration next week. To new beginnings, Terry said, clinking his glass against his mother's. I looked down at my hands, calloused and scarred from years of cooking, building, creating. These hands had turned a failing diner into a neighborhood gem. These hands had created the dishes that put us on the map. These hands, I realized as they curled into fists, weren't done fighting yet, not by a long shot. I spent the weekend in a daze, mechanically going through the motions of prep work and service while my mind raced with possibilities. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe there was an explanation that made sense of this betrayal. Earth to Jackie. Annika waved her hand in front of my face. My best friend and head server looked concerned. You've been staring at that sauce for 10 minutes. What's going on? Before I could answer, Terry burst through the kitchen doors, practically glowing. Everyone gather round. Big announcement. The kitchen staff dropped what they were doing, forming a circle. Margaret appeared at Terry's side, beaming like she'd just won the lottery. My stomach churned. We've got amazing news, Terry announced. Lorenzo's has been acquired by the Summit Restaurant Group. They're going to transform this place into something really special. The room erupted in confused murmurs. I gripped the edge of the prep table, knuckles white. What about our jobs? Carlos, my sous chef of 3 years, asked. Summit will evaluate everyone's positions during the transition, Margaret explained smoothly. But don't worry. Good kitchen help is always needed. Kitchen help. The words hit me like a physical blow. When did this happen? I found my voice, surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. When were you planning to discuss this with me, Terry? The room fell silent. Terry's smile faltered slightly. Jackie, honey, let's talk about this in private. No, I stepped forward. Let's talk about it right here. When were you planning to tell your wife, the executive chef who built this restaurant's reputation, that you were selling it? Now, Jacqueline, Margaret cut in, don't make a scene. This is a business decision. A business decision? I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. I own 30% of this restaurant. You can't sell without my signature. Terry's expression darkened. Actually, we can. Remember that paperwork you signed last month? The insurance documents? The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Those papers. I'd been in the middle of dinner service, and Terry had insisted they needed signing right away. You tricked me? My voice cracked. We did what was necessary, Margaret said firmly. You're an excellent chef, dear, but the business side of things, well, it's better left to those who understand it. Annika stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. Are you kidding me? Jackie's the reason this place is successful. That's enough, Terry snapped. The deal is done. Summit takes over next month. Anyone who wants to stay on can interview with the new management. I looked around at my staff, my family, seeing the shock and confusion on their faces. Carlos, who'd been with me since we served our first plate. Maria, whose dessert recipes had earned us write-ups in food magazines. All of them betrayed along with me. Jackie. Terry reached for my arm, but I jerked away. Be reasonable. You can keep cooking. That's what you love, right? What I loved, I said quietly, was building something of my own, something real. I untied my apron, letting it fall to the floor. But I guess that was never really mine, was it? I walked out of the kitchen, past the dining room where I'd served countless meals, past the bar where I'd celebrated our successes, and straight to my car. Annika followed, calling my name, but I couldn't stop. If I stopped, I'd fall apart. At home, I methodically packed a bag while Terry blew up my phone with messages. Each one made me angrier than the last. You're being dramatic. Think about this rationally. Mother and I know what's best. Your place is in the kitchen, not the boardroom. A knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find Annika, holding a bottle of wine and wearing her "let's plot revenge" face. I brought reinforcements, she said, pushing past me into the house. Also, I quit. Told Terry exactly where he could stick his transition period. Despite everything, I laughed. You didn't. Oh, I did. She pulled out 2 glasses. Now we're going to drink this wine, and then we're going to figure out how to make those backstabbing snakes regret the day they underestimated you. I sank onto the couch beside her, finally letting the tears fall. They're probably right. What do I know about business? I'm just the help. Bull! Annika poured the wine with force. Who negotiated our liquor licenses? Who created our inventory system? Who turned a failing diner into the hottest reservation in town? She handed me a glass. You're not just a chef, Jackie. You're a businesswoman who happens to be brilliant in the kitchen, and I think it's time we showed them exactly what they're losing. I took a sip of wine, my mind already spinning with possibilities. Terry and Margaret thought they'd won, thought they'd put me in my place. But they'd forgotten something crucial about chefs. We know exactly how to turn up the heat. You're right, I said, a plan beginning to form. And I think I know just the person to help us serve up some karma. Rick! I called out, waving to the familiar figure at the corner table of the busy cafe. He stood up, his crisp suit and confident smile exactly as I remembered from our previous business dealings. Jackie, he grasped my hand warmly. When you called, I could hardly believe it. You never did take me up on that investment offer. Because I was building something with my husband, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. Or so I thought. Rick's expression turned serious as I laid out everything that had happened. He'd been trying to invest in Lorenzo's for years, recognizing its potential early on. I'd always declined, loyal to the family business idea. Let me get this straight, he leaned forward. They sold to Summit without telling you? Those corporate vultures who turn every restaurant into a cookie-cutter franchise? I nodded, stirring my coffee. They tricked me into signing away my rights. The deal closes in 3 weeks. Interesting timing, Rick mused, pulling out his tablet. Summit's stock has been struggling. They need this acquisition to look good to their shareholders. He smiled, a predatory gleam in his eye. Which means they can't afford any complications. What kind of complications? Well, he swiped through some documents. Summit's whole pitch is about acquiring successful, well-running establishments. What happens if Lorenzo suddenly starts struggling right before the sale closes? Annika, who'd been quietly listening, perked up. You mean like if their executive chef and half the staff suddenly quit? Exactly, Rick nodded. And if certain health code violations were anonymously reported, if their stellar reviews suddenly turned mediocre, if their books showed some concerning patterns. I won't do anything illegal, I said firmly. Nothing illegal, Rick assured me, just strategic. Summit has a clause in their contract. They can back out if the restaurant's performance drops below certain metrics before closing. Your husband and mother-in-law are counting on that final payment. What happens if it falls through? My phone buzzed. Another text from Terry. Mother and I are willing to forgive your outburst. Come back to work and we can discuss your role in the new structure. My blood boiled. Tell me more about these metrics. Over the next hour, Rick outlined a plan that was both simple and devastating. I had access to everything. The recipes, the suppliers, the staff's loyalty. I knew every strength of Lorenzo's because I'd built them. "One more thing," Rick said as we wrapped up. "I have a property you might be interested in, right across the street from Lorenzo's. Perfect for a restaurant." My heart skipped. "I can't afford—" "You can with investors," he interrupted. "I'm not the only one who's noticed your talent, Jackie. Give me a week to put together a proposal." As if on cue, my phone lit up with a call from Chad, the restaurant critic from the Herald. I'd forgotten he was supposed to review Lorenzo's this week. "Jackie!" His familiar voice boomed through the speaker. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me you haven't left Lorenzo's." "It's complicated, Chad." "Uncomplicate it. I was coming to review your food, not whatever corporate garbage Summit's going to serve up. My column's due next week." I caught Rick's eye, an idea forming. What if you did both? Review Lorenzo's now, and then again, after Summit takes over? A before and after piece? There was a pause. A comparison piece showing how corporate acquisition affects beloved local restaurants? That's actually brilliant. But what about you? Please tell me you're not leaving the industry. Actually, I glanced at Rick, who nodded encouragingly. I might have some news for you soon about a new venture. After hanging up, Annika grabbed my arm. "Jackie, this is perfect. Chad's review will be the final nail in the coffin." "There's just one problem," I said. "Margaret's still working the front of house. She'll recognize Chad the moment he walks in." "No, she won't," Annika grinned wickedly. "Because I'm still in the group chat with the staff. Margaret's got a wedding to attend this weekend, 3 hours away, and Terry never works Saturday nights anymore." Rick gathered his things, looking pleased. "Sounds like the pieces are falling into place. I'll start working on the investment proposal. Jackie, are you sure you're ready for this?" I thought about all the times Margaret had undermined me, all the times Terry had dismissed my input as kitchen stuff. I thought about the staff who'd trusted me, the customers who'd supported us, the dreams I'd poured into every dish. "They want me to stay in my place?" I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in days. "Fine. My place is running a successful restaurant, just not theirs." As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed one more time. A message from Margaret. "Dear, I hope you're done with this tantrum. Remember, a woman's reputation in this industry is fragile. Don't burn bridges you can't rebuild." I showed the message to Annika, who snorted. "Oh, bridges will burn all right, but they're the ones who lit the match." Looking up at the bright summer sky, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time since overhearing that conversation in the kitchen, I smiled. They thought they were ending my story. They didn't realize they were just setting up my comeback. The Herald's review hit like a bomb on Sunday morning. Chad had outdone himself, painting a vivid picture of Lorenzo's transformation from a neighborhood gem into a soulless corporate acquisition. The final paragraph was particularly scathing. With executive chef Jacqueline's departure and Summit Group's impending takeover, one must wonder, will Lorenzo's remain the heartbeat of authentic Italian cuisine or become another casualty of corporate standardization? Only time will tell, but this critic's recent experience suggests the heart of the restaurant left with its chef. My phone exploded with notifications. Terry called 6 times before I finally answered. "What did you do?" he demanded. "Summit's threatening to pull out of the deal." "I didn't do anything," I replied calmly. "Chad reviewed the restaurant. Isn't that what you wanted?" "He came on the one night Mother and I weren't there, and suddenly half the staff called in sick, the wine deliveries were late, and the backup recipes were accidentally deleted from the system." I examined my nails. "Sounds like management problems to me. Good thing Summit's coming to fix everything." "Jackie, this isn't a game. Mother and I have already spent the first payment. We need this deal to close." I sat up straighter. "You spent money you don't have yet? That doesn't sound like good business sense, Terry." The line went silent for a moment. "Just come back. We can work something out. Give you a better position in the new structure." "Sorry, I'm busy. Actually heading to a meeting right now." I hung up and walked into the sleek office building where Rick had arranged to meet potential investors. Annika was already there, dressed sharply and clutching a portfolio of our business plan. "Ready to show them what you've got?" she asked. I straightened my jacket. "Born ready." The meeting room was intimidating, all glass and chrome, filled with serious-looking people in expensive suits. Rick stood at the head of the table, looking confident. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I'm excited to present an extraordinary opportunity. Chef Jacqueline, recently featured in the Herald's Rising Stars of Cuisine, is launching a new contemporary Italian restaurant. But don't take my word for it. Taste for yourself." On cue, servers brought out samples of my signature dishes, the ones that had put Lorenzo's on the map. I'd spent all night cooking them in Rick's test kitchen. The room fell silent as they ate. One woman closed her eyes in obvious pleasure. A man in the corner actually licked his fork. "The location is prime real estate," Rick continued, pulling up slides. "Direct visibility from the main street and—" He paused for effect. "Directly across from the soon-to-be struggling Lorenzo's." Questions flew rapid-fire. I answered each one with the confidence that came from years of running a successful restaurant, even if others hadn't acknowledged it. When I detailed my plans for modernizing traditional recipes, the woman who'd closed her eyes actually applauded. After the meeting, Rick was beaming. "They're in. All of them. We can start construction next month." My phone buzzed again. A text from Carlos, my former sous chef. "Summit's inspectors just left. They don't look happy. BTW, we all quit. When do you need us to start?" I showed Rick the message. "Looks like your complications are working." "Summit's stock dropped 3 points after that review." He grinned. "Their board is asking questions about the acquisition. Terry and Margaret's perfect plan is unraveling." Later that evening, I drove past Lorenzo's. Through the windows, I could see Margaret gesturing frantically at a group of people in suits, probably Summit executives. Terry sat at the bar, head in his hands. My phone rang. Margaret's number. "How dare you?" she hissed when I answered. "Summit's cutting their offer in half. They say the restaurant's not worth what was promised." Funny how things change when the kitchen help leaves, isn't it? "You ungrateful little— After everything we've done for you?" I laughed. "Everything you've done for me? I did everything for that restaurant. I made it what it is, and now I'm going to make something even better, without you." "What are you talking about?" "Oh, didn't you hear? A new restaurant's opening across the street, contemporary Italian. Maybe you'll come try it sometime, if you can afford it after Summit's done with you." I hung up before she could respond, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Through the window, I watched her face turn red as she presumably read the text I just sent, a screenshot of the signed lease for the building across the street. Annika's car pulled up beside mine. "Want to go celebrate? The investors loved you." "Actually," I said, "I need to go kitchen shopping. We've got a restaurant to build." "And a family to destroy?" I shook my head, watching Terry and Margaret argue through the window. "They're destroying themselves. We're just making sure we succeed while they do it." As we drove away, I caught one last glimpse of Lorenzo's in my rearview mirror. The sign that had once filled me with pride now reminded me of a valuable lesson. Success is the best revenge, but it's even sweeter when served across the street. 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming kitchen of Jacqueline's, watching my team prepare for our grand opening. The space hummed with energy as Carlos directed the line cooks through our final prep, the familiar sense of garlic and fresh herbs filling the air. "Chef," Annika called from the dining room, "the photographer from Food and Wine is here." I wiped my hands and walked out to greet him, passing under the elegant sign that bore my name. Just my name, no one else's. The dining room was a vision of modern sophistication, with warm lighting and exposed brick walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of Lorenzo's across the street, where Summit's generic signage now hung limply in the afternoon sun. "This location is interesting," the photographer said, glancing across the street. "Wasn't Lorenzo's quite popular before Summit took over?" "Was it?" I smiled innocently. I hadn't noticed their reviews lately. In truth, Lorenzo's was hemorrhaging customers. Summit's standardized menu and rotating cast of inexperienced chefs had turned the once bustling restaurant into just another chain outpost. Terry had taken to drinking at the bar most nights, while Margaret desperately tried to maintain her iron grip on an increasingly empty dining room. The photo shoot was interrupted by a commotion at the front door. Speak of the devil. Terry stood there, looking disheveled in his rumpled suit. "Jackie," he called out, his voice carrying across the restaurant. Can we talk, please? I excused myself from the photographer and approached my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband once the papers went through. You're drunk, Terry. I'm desperate, he corrected, swaying slightly. Summit's threatening to close Lorenzo's. Mother's having anxiety attacks. The bank... He lowered his voice. The bank is asking questions about our mortgage. Sounds like business problems, I said coolly. Better left to those who understand it, right? He flinched at his own words being thrown back at him. I was wrong, okay? We were wrong. I see that now. His eyes roamed the restaurant, taking in the sophisticated decor, the full reservation book, the staff moving with purpose and pride. You've built something amazing here. Again. I know. Maybe... He stepped closer, that old charming smile appearing. Maybe we could work something out? A partnership? I could help manage the front of house like old times. The sad thing was, part of me still loved him. Part of me remembered the young chef who'd once supported my dreams before his mother's influence and his own insecurities had poisoned everything. Chef, Carlos called from the kitchen. Need you to taste the special. I have to go, I told Terry. I have a restaurant to run. Jackie, please. You should leave before the dinner rush starts, I cut him off. We're fully booked tonight. Actually, we're fully booked for the next 3 months. As if to emphasize my point, Chad from the Herald walked in, notebook in hand. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Jackie, ready for that follow-up interview? The response to my comparison piece was incredible. People can't wait to hear about your new venture. Terry slunk away as I led Chad to a corner table. Through the windows, I could see Margaret standing outside Lorenzo's, watching us with a bitter expression. So, Chad said, setting up his recorder, tell me about the journey from Lorenzo's to Jacqueline's. It's quite a story of resilience. I glanced around my restaurant, my real restaurant, built on my terms. Actually, it's a story about knowing your worth, about not letting anyone tell you to stay in your place. The interview was interrupted by the arrival of Rick and several investors, all beaming with pride. Early numbers are exceeding projections, Rick announced. We're already talking about expansion possibilities. Expansion? Chad's eyebrows shot up. Do tell. As I outlined our future plans, I caught movement across the street. Terry was arguing with a man in a Summit corporate polo, gesturing wildly. Margaret stood in the doorway, her face pale, as she watched another group of customers walk past Lorenzo's and head toward my restaurant instead. Chef, Annika appeared at my elbow. The first reservations are arriving. I excused myself and headed to the kitchen, pausing to straighten a frame on the wall. My culinary school diploma, displayed prominently where everyone could see it. Below it hung the recent review Chad had written about Lorenzo's post-summit takeover. A cautionary tale of corporate acquisition gone wrong. The kitchen doors swung open to organized chaos, exactly how I liked it. Flames leaped from skillets, fresh pasta rolled through gleaming machines, and my hand-picked team moved like a well-oiled machine. Orders are coming in, chef, Carlos grinned, handing me my apron. I tied it on, feeling the familiar weight settle around my waist. Through the kitchen window, I could see the dining room filling up with eager guests, while across the street, Lorenzo's stood nearly empty. All right, team, I called out, clapping my hands. Let's show them what we can do. The lunch rush was in full swing when Margaret stormed into Jacqueline's, her designer handbag swinging like a weapon. I watched through the kitchen window as Annika intercepted her. I'm sorry, we're fully booked, Annika said sweetly. Perhaps try across the street? I hear they have plenty of available tables. Don't play games with me, Margaret snapped. I need to speak with Jacqueline, now. I wiped my hands and stepped out of the kitchen. You can speak with me right here, Margaret. She looked around at my packed dining room, her face twisting. Summit is pulling out completely. They're terminating the contract and demanding their initial payment back. Are you happy now? You've destroyed everything. You destroyed everything, I corrected her, keeping my voice level. The moment you and Terry decided I was just the help. We were protecting you. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You never understood the business side. Remember when you first started? You couldn't even balance the books. The memory hit hard. My first month at Lorenzo's, struggling with the accounting software while Margaret watched over my shoulder, clicking her tongue disapprovingly. But that was then. Actually, Rick's voice cut in as he approached from the bar, Jacqueline's business plan is one of the most impressive I've seen in 20 years of restaurant investment. She just needed someone to believe in her abilities outside the kitchen. Margaret's face reddened. This is family business. Stay out of it. Family, I laughed. Was it family when you tricked me into signing away my rights? When you dismissed everything I built as kitchen stuff? We need help, she said, her voice cracking. Terry's drinking too much. The bank is threatening foreclosure on our house. Just tell us what you want. Money? A share in this place? I want you to leave, I said firmly. And I want you to remember this moment the next time you think about underestimating someone. You ungrateful little, she started, but stopped as Carlos appeared with 2 steaming plates. Chef, he said, the food critic from Taste magazine would like your opinion on her dishes. I turned away from Margaret. Please see yourself out. We have paying customers to attend to. As she left, I heard her mutter, You'll regret this. Family is everything. No, I called after her. Excellence is everything. That's what you never understood. The rest of the day passed in a blur of service and success. As the dinner rush wound down, Annika found me in my office, reviewing the day's numbers. You okay? She asked. That thing with Margaret was intense. I'm fine, I said, but my hands shook slightly as I set down my tablet. Just remembering things. Want to talk about it? I stood up, walking to the window that overlooked both restaurants. Lorenzo's was dark already. They'd stopped serving dinner weeks ago. When I first married Terry, Margaret took me aside and said she'd teach me everything about running a restaurant. But every lesson was really about staying in my place. The kitchen is your domain, she'd say. Leave the important decisions to those who know better. And now look who knows better, Annika smiled. My phone buzzed, a text from Terry. Please help. I'll do anything. I deleted it without responding. Chef, Carlos burst in. You need to see this. He held up his phone, showing a local news website. The headline read, Summit Restaurant Group faces investigation over fraudulent acquisition practices. They're saying Summit knew Lorenzo's books were manipulated before the sale, Carlos explained excitedly. They were trying to hide their own financial problems with quick acquisitions. Terry and Margaret could be implicated. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. They did it to themselves, I said quietly. Chef, one of the line cooks appeared at the door. There's a situation in the kitchen. The new sauce isn't setting right. I straightened up, pushing away the memories and regrets. Let's go fix it. In the kitchen, surrounded by the controlled chaos I loved, I felt my strength return. This was my domain, not because someone told me to stay here, but because I chose it. I'd mastered every aspect of the restaurant business, from the books to the cooking, and no one could take that away from me. Hey, Annika caught my arm as I passed. Remember what you told that journalist last week? About success being the best revenge? I nodded. Well, I think you're wrong, she grinned. Success isn't revenge at all. It's justice. Through the kitchen window, I watched my dining room full of happy customers, my competent staff, my beautiful restaurant. Across the street, Lorenzo stood as a dark reminder of what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Order up, I called out, turning back to my kitchen. Let's show them how it's done. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick's voice carried across the packed dining room. Welcome to the official grand opening of Jacqueline's. Applause filled the space as I emerged from the kitchen, still wearing my chef's coat. The restaurant had been open for 2 months, but tonight was our formal celebration. Food critics, local celebrities, and loyal customers filled every table. Before we begin tonight's special tasting menu, Rick continued, our executive chef and owner would like to say a few words. I stepped up to the small podium, my hands trembling slightly. Through the windows, I could see Terry and Margaret standing across the street, watching. They'd received their official eviction notice from Lorenzo's that morning. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. Someone once told me that my place was in the kitchen, not in the boardroom. Knowing laughter rippled through the crowd, my story had become somewhat legendary in local restaurant circles. They were half right, I continued. My place is in the kitchen, and the boardroom, and anywhere else I choose to excel. Because success isn't about staying in your place, it's about creating your own. More applause. I caught sight of Chad from the Herald nodding appreciatively, his pen flying across his notepad. Tonight's menu tells a story, I said. Each dish represents a step in my journey. From the appetizer, my grandmother's arancini recipe that first made me fall in love with cooking, to the dessert, a modern take on traditional tiramisu that represents where we're heading. As if on cue, the kitchen doors swung open and servers emerged with the first course. The timing was perfect, just as we'd rehearsed. But most importantly, I added, tonight celebrates the power of believing in yourself, even when others don't. Thank you to my incredible team, my loyal customers, and everyone who helped make this dream a reality. I raised my glass, and the room followed suit. Through the windows, I saw Margaret turn away, pulling a reluctant Terry with her. The evening progressed perfectly until the dessert course, when Annika rushed up to me in the kitchen. "Terry's at the bar," she whispered. "He's demanding to speak with you, says he won't leave until you hear him out." I found him slumped on a bar stool, looking worse than ever. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose. "You need to leave," I said firmly. "Jackie, please," he slurred slightly. "The bank's taking the house. Mother's moving in with my sister. Everything's falling apart." "That's what happens when you build success on lies," I replied. "You taught me that." "I was wrong," he said, his voice breaking. "I let Mother control everything. I forgot who you really were, what you could do. Look at all this." He gestured around the restaurant. "You did this without me. You did it better without me." "Yes, I did. Give me another chance," he pleaded. "I could work here, start at the bottom, prove myself." For a moment, I remembered the young chef I'd fallen in love with, the man who'd once supported my dreams before his mother poisoned everything. But that man was gone. "No, Terry," I said gently. "You can't work here. You can't be part of this. Because you never really believed in me. You just believed in controlling me." "Jackie." "Chef," Carlos appeared at my elbow. "The food critic from Bon Appetit is asking about the inspiration behind the dessert." I turned back to Terry. "You should go. Your mother's probably waiting." "She's not," he said quietly. "She blames me for everything. Says I should have controlled you better." "Controlled me?" I laughed. "That was always the problem, wasn't it? You and Margaret were so busy trying to keep me in my place that you never noticed I'd outgrown it." Rick approached, his expression concerned. "Everything okay here?" "Terry was just leaving," I said firmly. "You'll regret this," Terry muttered, but the words held no power anymore. "No," I replied. "I only regret not doing it sooner." As security escorted him out, I returned to the dining room, where happy customers were finishing their desserts. Chad caught my eye and raised his glass in a silent toast. "Chef," Carlos called from the kitchen, "we need you for the final plating." I took one last look through the windows at Lorenzo's dark interior, remembering all the dreams I'd poured into that space. But standing in my own restaurant, surrounded by people who respected and valued me, I realized those dreams hadn't been lost. They'd just found a better home. "Coming!" I called back, turning away from the window and my past. In the kitchen, my team waited with the final dessert plates, each one a perfect representation of tradition, transformed into something new and better, just like me. "Let's finish strong," I said, picking up my plating spoon. "We've got our own legacy to build." The morning sun streamed through Jacqueline's windows as I unlocked the front door, breathing in the familiar scent of fresh bread already baking. Carlos always arrived early to start the day's prep. A movement across the street caught my eye. Workers were taking down the Lorenzo sign, leaving a blank space where my old life had once been. The local paper had reported that a boutique clothing store would be moving in. No more restaurant competition. "Morning, chef," Annika breezed in, carrying 2 coffee cups. "Did you see the email from Food and Wine?" I nodded, unable to hold back my smile. The magazine had named Jacqueline's one of the top 10 new restaurants in America. The photo shoot was scheduled for next week. "Have you heard from Terry or Margaret?" she asked carefully. "Terry's sister called yesterday," I said, accepting the coffee. "Apparently, Margaret's driving her crazy, reorganizing her entire house and criticizing her cooking. Terry's staying with a friend, looking for work in another city. Good riddance, Annika muttered. The kitchen doors swung open, and Carlos emerged with a fresh croissant. Chef, you need to taste this new recipe. I think I've perfected the butter-to-dough ratio. As I bit into the perfectly flaky pastry, the front door chimed. Rick walked in, followed by an elegant woman I recognized from restaurant magazine covers, Diana, the famous restaurateur who owned venues across the country. Jackie, Rick beamed, Diana's been very interested in our success here. Please, Diana held up her hand. Let me speak for myself. She turned to me, her eyes sharp and appraising. I've been watching you, Jacqueline. The way you handled the Lorenzo situation, the way you built this place, it's impressive. Thank you, I said cautiously. I'm not here to buy you out, she smiled, reading my expression. I'm here to propose a partnership. Your recipes, your management style, your vision, but with the resources to expand. Multiple locations, each one unique, each one reflecting its community while maintaining your standards. Rick nodded encouragingly. I've reviewed the proposal. It's solid, Jackie. You'd maintain creative control. And who would run this location? I asked. You would, Diana replied. This would be the flagship. I don't want to change what works. I want to help it grow. Before I could respond, the door chimed again. Margaret stood there, looking smaller somehow without her designer clothes and perfect makeup. I need to speak with you, she said quietly. Diana raised an eyebrow. Should we give you a moment? No, I said firmly. Whatever she has to say, she can say in front of everyone. Margaret stepped forward, clutching her worn purse. I came to apologize. I was wrong about you, about everything. A bit late for that, isn't it? Yes, she admitted, but I wanted you to know. Seeing what you've built here, how everyone respects you. I understand now what I tried to destroy, what I tried to keep Terry from seeing. And what's that? That you were never just the help, she said, her voice cracking. You were the heart, the vision, everything we pretended to be but weren't. I let her words hang in the air for a moment, then turned to Diana. Tell me more about this partnership. Margaret took the hint and left quietly, the door closing softly behind her. Diana smiled and pulled out a folder. Let's talk details. As we sat discussing expansion plans and creative control, I watched my staff prepare for the day. Carlos training a new line cook, Annika arranging the dining room with perfect precision, Rick adding his business insights to Diana's proposal. This was my real family. People who believed in excellence over control, support over suppression. One more thing, Diana said, sliding a final document across the table. We'll need a new name for the restaurant group. She tapped the proposed logo, Jacqueline's Restaurant Group, where vision meets tradition. Perfect, I smiled, picking up the pen. The door chimed one final time. A young woman in chef's whites stood nervously in the entrance. Can I help you? I asked. I'm here about the apprenticeship program, she said. The one for aspiring female chefs? My mother says I should stick to serving, but you want more, I finished for her. She nodded eagerly. I glanced at the empty space across the street where Lorenzo's sign had been, then back at this young chef with dreams in her eyes. Come on back to the kitchen, I said, standing up. Let's see what you can do. As I led her through my restaurant, my empire in the making, I caught my reflection in the polished surfaces. I saw not just a chef, not just a businesswoman, but someone who had refused to stay in her place. And now I could help others do the same. First lesson, I told my new apprentice, handing her an apron. Success isn't about fitting into someone else's kitchen, it's about building your own.